Hello, welcome one and all. We are here from Gaming Alexandria coming at you. And today is a very special day. We are going to begin our read through of Blake J. Harris's Console Wars, Sega, Nintendo, and the Battle That Defined a Generation. There'll be people popping in and out, but to start off, we have the intrepid co host and star of today's event. That is Alex Smith of They Create Worlds.
Hey, Ethan, friend of the show. Happy to be here.
And then we have, playing some supporting roles, Jonny,
Hello, everyone.
Jumpman,
Good evening.
and in the peanut gallery, Kefki. I'll just assume a hello on that one. But yes, this is going to be a dramatic read through of the classic Console Wars. Yeah, we'll get into it. This book is infamous in many ways, but is also one of the most popular video game history books out there. Uh, and it is written in the form of a novel. It's not written like a screenplay, even though it is very much attempting to be a screenplay.
Mm-hmm.
We'll read the preface in which he talks a little bit about this stuff. But so we're going to be taking on the voices of the characters as we go, with the hopes to have people play consistent characters throughout all this. Yeah. If there's people who jump in, they can play single roles, but otherwise we are going to try and fill everything out as we go.
Or more accurately, we are going to each of us are going to play a character. Any resemblance to the real characters, living or dead, is most likely purely coincidental.
Yes, the people in this book have become famous in the circles of video game history, and we may attempt some affectations, but ultimately we are doing this in the spirit of fun rather than of accuracy, because none of these conversations happened anyway, so that would
You
be
mean,
folly.
are you saying people don't talk like that, Ethan?
You can judge for yourself on this one. So we're not going to just do an uninterrupted read through. Encourage anybody, whether in the voice chat or in Twitch chat, to spring up questions about things regarding historical events or anything in between. We will definitely pop into stuff in the middle of things. I'll be doing the read through of the non-dialogue text. And if there are any comments that pop up or jokes you want to make, you are entirely free to do so. We are not taking this too seriously. This is definitely not an audiobook. We have been told that the audiobook for this book is actually very good by one Mr. Quarter Past, who has listened through it all the way through.
I'm sure it will be better than whatever monstrosity we are about to unleash upon the world.
Indeed. But this will be more fun.
Absolutely.
So I guess without further ado, we'll tackle things as we go along. But let us begin. We are not going to read the foreword. The foreword is a discussion, invented discussion between Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, who are actors if you're not from America, and
producers.
Yes, and producers, and that's why they are in here, because Blake Harris was attempting to use a relationship with them to get this made into a movie.
I want to be a producer with a video game history movie at MGM. I want.
Alex may spontaneously break into song throughout this, but basically it's like, it's like, wasn't it cool back in the 90s, man? Like, that's what the intro is. It's boring, it's not funny, it's not relevant. So we're gonna skip that part.
The 90s were also not funny and not relevant, says this person who lived through them.
I lived through most of them. So, we will hit this and then hit the forward. Dedication for Katie, the girl with the shiny eyes.
We will not make fun of that. That's sweet.
Yeah, dedications are always personal. That is as it is. We're not here against Blake Harris as a person. Just
No.
we are researchers and we are taking that bent as we go through this. Console Wars is a narrative account based on information obtained from hundreds of interviews. Recreating a story of this nature, which draws from the recollections of a multitude of sources, can also often lead to inconsistencies, particularly when dealing with industry competitors, and especially when dealing with events that took place more than 2 decades ago. As such, I have recreated the scenes in this book using the information uncovered from my interviews, facts gathered from supporting documents, and my best judgment as to what version most closely fits the documentary record. In certain situations, details of settings and description have been altered, reconstructed, or imagined. Additionally, most of the dialogue in this book has been recreated based on source recollections of content, premise, and tone. Some of the conversations recounted in this book took place over extended periods of time or in multiple locations, but have been condensed or reorganized in a slightly different manner while remaining true to the integrity and spirit of all original discussions.
So if you thought you were in for history, think again.
Yeah. It's not just about the rearranging stuff. We will get into this, as we go. There is very good reason to doubt many of the conversations ever taking place. In any form. Whether extended or in one session or whatever.
Yes. Now, some of the ideas behind those conversations may have been conveyed in interviews to Blake, but it's just the actual talking about these things would not have occurred.
And especially not in the dialogue as presented. But
Yes.
let us finally get into things. I actually need to pull up. Alex put together a what he calls a dramatis personae for this book.
Still in progress, but it is complete as far as we're getting tonight. So that's all that
Yes.
matters.
So right now we have the yeah. We'll actually read the the descriptions as Alex put them in here, and we will need some people to jump in to take these tertiary roles as well. So first up, we have. I was gonna give it to you, but instead we got awkward silence.
Oh, I suppose I need to pull up my copy of the Dramatis Personae then if I'm going to be required to read it from it. So let me do that real fast, and then the silences will get less awkward.
But they will still be awkward.
Yes. And my apologies to any real person, living or dead, for any of these descriptions. It's all in the spirit of the book and does not reflect the individuals and their personalities.
Can you tell
Also,
that Alex went to law school?
I am joining this recording on behalf of my podcast, They Create Worlds, which is owned by They Create Worlds LLC. So anyone who is upset about anything I say or do, I am acting as an agent of my limited liability company, and that's who you'll have to go after.
By the way, I'm going to blame Alex for the idea to do this read through in the first place.
Yes. So, do you want me to read all of the
No,
characters that are in the
you just
chapter?
read for
or...
Tom. I'll do the other two.
Oh, okay, yeah. So the prologue. Our first character is Tom Kalinske, president of Universal Matchbox. He's got moxie.
And there he is, right there. A man for the ages. Isn't that a man you could trust with your life?
To be this handsome takes ages. To be this handsome takes Sega.
Then we have David Ye. Head of the Universal Matchbox Group has never been to Spain. Who wants to take David Ye? Don't all
It's
jump
a
at
small
once.
roll. It's a small roll. You won't have to say much.
I'll
Does
do
he
it.
appear like? Oh, go.
All right, Jumpman will take that. And then we have a slightly recurring role, which is Karen Kalinske, wife of Tom, always ready when the narrative demands emotional support. Could you take that one for now, Jonny? Because actually Dilly will be playing that role later
Okay,
on,
sure.
when he gets here. So, let us get into it. Prologue of Console Wars.
Dun,
It-
dun.
In 1987, Tom Kalinske was at a crossroads. He had spent the better part of his career working at Mattel, where he enjoyed towering success, transforming the Barbie line from a niche has-been series of dolls into a timeless billion-dollar property. Recognizing his potential, the company groomed him to become their next president. But shortly after taking the reins, at only 38 years old, he found himself embroiled in a dangerous game of office politics. The most dangerous game. With no resolution in sight, Kalinske decided that rather than wage an internal war, he'd prefer to fight an external one. So he ceded control of Mattel to a rival executive and left the company to become president of a competitor, Universal Matchbox.
That rival executive was John Ammerman. I do not know why they didn't bother to name him.
Probably just keeping down the nouns.
There are so many nouns.
Although Matchbox's toy cars had historically gone toe-to-toe with Mattel's Hot Wheels brand, when Kalinske took over, his new company was hemorrhaging money and had recently been placed into receivership. He knew this was going on. It was part of what had enticed him, but taking on Goliath eagerly didn't do much to change the incline of the uphill battle ahead. Already we're getting into the metaphors here, the
that was-
tortured metaphors.
That was an uphill incline of a metaphor or something.
To revive the wounded company from receivership and to give Hot Wheels, and of course Mattel, a run for their money, Kalinske needed to reorganize Matchbox, and to do so in a flash. He spent the next couple of years traveling the globe and implementing ambitious restructuring plans. Much of which...
I was going to say fancy way of saying he laid everybody off.
That's a thing that, executives need to do from time to time. Not to excuse it, but they do.
Oh,
have
no,
to do
no.
it.
Yeah, I'm not criticizing him. I'm just saying, ambitious restructuring plans mean laid a whole lot of people off.
Much of which hinged on moving all production to labor-cheap regions in Asia, which Mattel was very early on, all things considered.
They really were.
The other toy companies got to it late. By 1990, his strategies appeared to be working, and Matchbox had become relevant again. Hooray! But they were still miles away from bridging the gap with Mattel. But with revenue now over $350 million, the company had managed to turn a profit for the first time in years. Matchbox cars were starting to sell all around the world, except, for some reason, in Spain. So Kalinske went there to see why not. After arriving in Barcelona, Kalinske hopped into a cab to meet with the distributor in charge of selling Matchbox cars in the Spanish territories. Instead of embarrassing himself by trying to pronounce the address where he was headed, he simply passed the distributor's business card to the cab driver. The driver glanced at the card, noticed the Matchbox logo, and nodded. Kalinske
Probably noticed the address more than he noticed the Matchbox logo. I doubt every taxi cab driver in Barcelona was intimately familiar with the Matchbox factory.
Kalinske was baffled. His distributor worked out of a tiny office. How could this driver possibly know where to go based only on the logo? He's very insistent on this. I'm sure this is something Kalinske told him. But...
Yes, I know, but I doubt it was quite like that. Maybe though, maybe.
I mean, you don't need to read a business card too long to know where to read all of it.
Yeah.
Once again, Kalinske tried to present the business card to the driver, only to be waved off. Matchbox C, the driver said firmly. Kalinske was confused, but ultimately he decided he wasn't a Spanish cab driver and it wasn't his job to know such things.
Since this is Barcelona, there's a good chance the cab driver was in fact Basque and not Spanish. So
Ah.
be careful there, Blake. Careful.
He leaned back, took in the panoramic view of a sprawling Barcelona. That is panoramic something you just kind of observe? Like, I don't know.
It's hard to get a panoramic view from the back seat of a taxi cab in my
Yes.
personal experience, but yeah.
And try to remember if you're supposed to tip cab drivers in Spain or not. Alex?
I have never taken a cab in Spain, so I don't know.
Okay. Shortly thereafter, the driver stopped in front of a large yellow building. Kalinske stepped out of a cab and compared the address to the one on the business card. It didn't match. In broken Spanish, Kalinske tried to argue with the driver, but the guy remained insistent that this was the right place. We do actually have someone in this server from Spain. I wish we had him here to add sound effects, but
Indeed.
alas not. Kalinske finally gave in and told the driver to wait outside as he entered the building, but as soon as he stepped inside, he was greeted by a surprise. It should be greeted with a surprise. I believe that would be the proper way to say that.
You're right, because the surprise was not saying hello, Tom. So yes, it would probably be with a surprise. Not that my own book doesn't have similar kind of like little grammatical errors.
Right.
So I better be careful.
Yes, but this is a
Or
mass
Blake Harris
market
might read They
publication.
Create Worlds, and nobody needs that.
Well, I think he does need a little bit of that.
Oh.
But anyway. Thousands of surprises, actually. The building turned out to be an industrial factory, churning out tiny die-cast Matchbox cars by the minute. Huh? Kalinske had moved all production to Asia, so why were shiny little cars shooting off the rusty conveyor belt in Spain? Why was this why profits had been lagging? Who'd authorized this? Returning to his broken Spanish, Kalinske asked the first worker he saw if he could use a phone. He whipped out the calling card he'd been
Donde
using.
está la biblioteca?
He whipped out the calling card he'd been using to stay in touch with his wife and rang up his business partner David Ye in Hong Kong.
Hey, what's up, Tom?
Ye asked.
You making the Barcelona okay?
Kalinske had no time for small talk.
I thought production had been moved to Asia. All of it.
It was.
Then why do we have a factory in Spain?
What do you mean? We don't have a factory in Spain.
Kalinske looked around. Cars continued to pop out.
I'm definitely in Spain, and I'm definitely in a factory.
Oh, shit.
Ye belted.
Get the hell out of there and call the police.
Kalinske looked up. Dozens of unfriendly eyes were now staring in his direction, and seconds later, the gruff group of Spaniards began to approach him. Without even hanging up the phone, Kalinske sprinted out into the street, jumped into the cab, and yelled the few Spanish words he knew.
Vámonos!
Kalinske went straight to the police, and shortly thereafter, the illegal factory, set up by the very distributor he was in town to meet, was raided. This unexpected Spanish adventure, full of twists, turns, and toy cars, led Kalinske to the following thoughts. Hey, at least the cars were selling in Spain, even if we didn't make a dime. Good thing for that driver, or the mystery might never have been solved. It's probably time for me to leave Matchbox and go do something else.
I just want to pause for a second and note how he set up the scene like Kalinske's life may have very well been in danger, that the factory workers were going to surround him and
Dismember him.
and dismember him and like grind up his body and hide it in the diecast cars.
Ah, boy.
It was a dramatic scene.
Yes. I'm sure that I can understand being perturbed in a situation like that, but
Oh, I
yeah.
can too, but no, it's just the way the scene's set. It's like they start moving towards him, and he dashes to the cab.
The first instance of Blake Harris making things rather dramatic.
Yes.
Though the incident served as a catalyst for his leaving, this was only a small factor in his departure. Ultimately, Kalinske left Matchbox because it would never be Hot Wheels. It would never be number one, and it could never be big enough to prove to Mattel that they were wrong. He needed that chance. But where?
And
Lost.
then the Matchbox was bought by Hot Wheels.
Ah. Lost, frustrated, and unsure what to do next, Kalinske receded from the world in the safety of his home, like most of us. He was perfecting the art of becoming a hermit until his wife, Karen, prescribed a remedy for his mood.
We need to get you out of the house.
She explained.
So guess what? Congratulations, you're taking your family on a vacation.
Karen, the perpetual voice of reason, was right again. And so, with this advice, in July 1990, Kalinske took his family to Hawaii, where Karen enjoying the beach, their 3 girls enjoying building and then stomping on sandcastles, and Tom tried his best to stop thinking about a million things at once. It was exactly what Tom Kalinske needed. Then midway through the trip, an unexpected guest showed up.
Was it the Spanish factory workers? Did they track him down in the end?
Oh, that would be good. All right.
Spanish
That was Hayao
Inquisition.
Nakayama. I thought Hayao Nakayama appearing to listen on the lips.
All right. So, Chapter 1, The Opportunity. Tom, what is your new description?
Yes, our protagonist remains Tom Kalinske, unemployed toy executive of dashing good looks and impeccable judgment.
Meeting him this time around will be Hayao Nakayama, CEO of Sega Enterprises Limited, keeper of the Nakayama-ver. And we have Ashley Kalinske, the elder daughter of Tom, likes it when her dad wanders off with mysterious Japanese men. Mark, will you be able to read a few lines for Karen? Or for Ashley?
Sure.
Okay. Then Karen Kalinske, wife of Tom, just wants a nice nap on the beach. As do we all. As do we all.
Hard to blame her.
Tom Kalinske had a secret. Oh no. What's the secret? What's the secret? For years, he had managed to keep it to himself, covering it up with a combination of white lies, non-committal nods, and uneven smiles. But as he lay on a magnificent beach in sunny Maui with his loving wife and 3 energetic daughters, he could no longer keep it inside. He had to tell someone. The right person to tell was Karen, of course. She had always been there for him, and most important, she seemed to possess a magical ability for making his anxieties disappear. She really was his voice of reason, the love of his life, and apparently very much asleep.
Hey, Karen.
He said, nudging her now tanned shoulder.
Karen?
He lifted up her sunglasses, which confirmed the blazing sun had knocked her into a slumber. That's probably not the best thing. You might want to get her out of the sun. Kalinske considered some other subtle means to poke or prod his wife into waking up, until, upon further inspection, he noticed that her newborn daughter, Kelly, cradled in her arms, was also asleep.
Ooh. Sorry about that, ladies.
Kalinske said, honoring the unwritten rule that all fathers should abide by. Do not, under any circumstances, wake an infant, especially when her fragile little nap allows Mom a rare moment of uninterrupted, sun-filled dreams. Karen, it appeared, was off the hook, and wouldn't have time to play the role of secret keeper this time. Kalinske thought about telling one of his other daughters, Ashley, 5 years old, or Nicole, 3. But they were ankle-deep in the ocean, capturing hermit crabs in a bright yellow bucket and making the kinds of memories that they'd inevitably forget and only their father would remember. So he returned to reading a day-old New York Times, but as he scrolled through previews of baseball games that had already been played, a slender silhouette covered his newspaper. "Hello, Tom," a cheerful voice said. "You are a difficult man to track down." Kalinske looked up to find a Japanese man with piercing brown eyes and a messy, wind-mangled comb-over, Hayao Nakayama. What are you up to? Nakayama asked, trying to emit a friendly smile, which came out looking more like an ominous smirk. Kalinske would soon learn that Nakayama was incapable of producing a genuine smile. Oh my god!
Wow.
I mean,
Whoa.
I have seen pictures of him smiling. Like, and Yamauchi too, believe it or not. They can smile.
Hold on, let me grab one. I mean, maybe not.
I
maybe
mean,
not the
that's not a
best.
smile. Well, there, we caught one. Basically. Okay, that may be a somewhat fair characterization.
Well,
Yeah.
we should note, Blake Harris did actually get to talk to Nakayama.
Yes,
On
very
the-
very briefly, but yes.
And on the condition that it was entirely off the record.
Yes. Nakayama is still with us I think he's in his 90s now. I think he's crossed that threshold.
Yeah, right about there.
Yep.
His round face always held too much mystery, making simple, genuine emotions hard to pull off.
Well, I was trying to have a nice, relaxing moment with the sun here until you got between us.
Kalinske gracefully shot back. He never allowed himself to appear off guard in conversations, and was committed to masking any discomfort or ease with a James Deanian coolness. Oh boy. And I like that that's a one word as well.
Yeah.
Nakayama suddenly realized that he was casting a shadow over Kalinske and took a couple steps to the side. As the sun hit his face, Kalinske smiled and greeted his unexpected guest.
Great to see you, Nakayama-san. What brings you out to Hawaii?
I came here to find you, and just as I just said, you are a difficult man to track down. Nakayama spoke nearly perfect English, albeit with a strange, slight Brooklyn accent, which probably has to do with his working with
with David Rosen, or it could be with, from working with the Valinsky brothers before that.
yeah,
Yep.
from the American-born Jews.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Valinskys were Lithuanian born, but I think they also spent time in America. Fun fact, I'm 99% certain. I can't quite complete the genealogy, but the dates line up. So it should be correct. And the names are the same. So it should be correct. But Nakayama got his start with the Valinsky brothers, Jewish importers in Japan. And Samuel Valinsky was the grandfather of Monica Lewinsky.
Oh.
True story.
It's got to be the same because her grandfather was a Samuel Valinsky who did stuff in Japan, and he died in 1962, which is when my V&V vending Samuel Valinsky died. So it's got to be.
It was smooth and seamless, except for an occasional broken phrase. His errors, however, seemed to have less to do with grammatical difficulties and more to do with the rhythm of his conversation. It was almost as if he threw in a few mistakes from time to time as camouflage, allowing him to hide behind the language barrier and play the role of a clueless foreigner, if need be. When I heard about your departure from Matchbox, I left many messages at your home. Nakayama tried another smile, this one coming out like a spooky grin. You see, I prepared a little bit.
Yes.
If anyone doesn't know what I'm doing, then throw guesses in the chat. Kalinske bowed his head a bit. After leaving Matchbox, he had tried his best to hide from the universe. Well, that's a little difficult. He screened all his calls, turned off the fax machine, and rarely left the house. He had been feeling small in the world, and he dealt with it by making his world as small as possible. Karen had been good about dealing with his reclusive behavior. She knew he was down and didn't press the issue. Her husband had bounced back from many things over the years, and there was no doubt in her mind he would soon return to the world more spectacular than ever before. In the meantime, she didn't mind having him around the house. For a temporary recluse, he was quite friendly, good with the dishes, and only sometimes a liability when doing the laundry. How do you get good with the dishes?
Hmm.
A lot of practice.
Yeah. Same way you get good at everything else. Yeah, I got your messages. Sorry I hadn't gotten back to you yet.
Kalinske said.
I've just been trying to take some time to myself and figure things out a little.
Ah, yes, Nakayama said. But don't you know that this is why I called? Then, right there in the middle of the Kalinskis' family vacation, Nakayama made him an offer to become the next president and CEO of Sega of America. As unusual as it was to be offered a top-level executive job on the beach, Kalinske wasn't completely shocked. After all, Nakayama was the president of Sega Enterprises, and there had been rumors for some time that he was looking to replace Michael Katz, the current head of Sega's American operation, and a man Kalinske knew personally and considered a friend. Well, that is not a mutual feeling, Tom. I don't think. We'll get there, but yeah. Nakayama cleared his throat. What do you say, Tom? I am certain you are the man for the job. We have a wonderful new video game console. Oh,
We
our
have
first
such
sin
sights.
here. One word. Blake Harris isn't British, right?
No.
Yeah. So this is doubly bad. Kalinske looked at Nakayama, studying the weathered version of a face he knew well. Alex, you're doing the method acting, right? So you're pursing your brow and turning your head.
Staring straight into the Nakayama.
Yes, indeed. Oh, wrong one. Here we go. There it is.
There it is. With a spooky grin. The other one's better because it has a spooky grin.
There we go.
Spooky.
Very
Have
nice.
you seen this man before? Call us.
That is good. That is good.
Psychologists believe it to be the face of God.
They had met in the late 70s when Kalinske was still the golden boy at Mattel. At the time, they were two companies that were the envy of all others, Apple and Atari. Though it was unrealistic for Mattel to jump into the high-tech, high-risk world of personal computers, it could certainly afford to try its hand at mimicking Atari. Though Kalinske mostly dealt with dolls and action figures, he couldn't help but see how ridiculously popular and profitable video games were becoming, and he decided Mattel's toy division would release handheld electronic games like football and racing.
I mean, that wasn't his decision. There was a
Yeah.
guy named Ray Wagner who was in charge of the toy division of Mattel at the time, but sure. He decided.
Yeah, but and in the upcoming Intellivision book, they did talk to Kalinske and get a bit more details on his specific role with Mattel Electronics.
He was there. No, I mean he was certainly at the company and had some idea of what was going on, but he was not the top level decision maker because at this time Ray Wagner was in charge of Mattel Toys.
The gameplay was repetitive and the graphics were mediocre at best. Some people wouldn't even call those graphics. But the handheld games were a smashing success. As Kalinske looked to quickly expand this line of business beyond sports, he didn't have anything to do with the business decisions of Mattel Electronics.
And Kalinske himself would tell you that. I mean, this is Harris getting weird.
He sought out Nakayama to talk about turning some of Sega's popular arcade hits into a line of portable games. The handheld technology turned out to be too simplistic to handle Sega's games, though, so no deal could be reached. Now, if this is true, This would be a very early instance of trying to get licensing into.
I would be shocked if this is in fact true. I think Harris is probably conflating some other, something that would floor me. Especially Kalinski's not even in the chain of command on any of
Right.
this. I mean, it makes no sense.
Well, I mean, if let's say that it wasn't Kalinski's doing, but that discussions did happen for labeling some of the electronic games as Sega games. It is possible in that instance for Kalinske to eventually meet Nakayama as they're going back and forth on these negotiations.
Sure, but this whole thing doesn't pass the smell test for me. Because
Yeah.
this would have come out somewhere. If not in all of our random talking to Mattel people, then certainly the Intellivision MIT book. This would have come out.
Yeah, so I'm definitely skeptical of it, especially because the the relationships that Sega and Gremlin had were with
Yeah.
Milton Bradley and Coleco, primarily. I mean, there's a gap in there where something could have happened, but we do know that Gremlin did talk with Mattel. That I actually found a document in which they talked about it, but they seem to have been talking about it television stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very much on the low ebb that this could have happened, but if it did, it would have been a pretty early example of trying to get.
Well, and you see, if it did happen, it probably happened with the LCD games. Because, I mean, Mattel did make a deal with Cinematronics and licensed like Armor Attack and whatnot for their LCD games in the early 80s. So if there were discussions, it was probably in the early 80s for the LCD stuff and not for like the pre-Intellivision handhelds.
Despite not moving forward together, Nakayama found Kalinske endearing and was impressed with his encyclopedic knowledge of the toy industry. The two had remained on good terms ever since. Oh yes, and something else to mention is that there was a direct link from Mattel Electronics to Sega. This is not mentioned in the book at all, but we have gotten a few stories on this. When David Rosen left Sega at the beginning of 1981, the guy who filled in his role as the head of the American company was Jeff Rockless, who was the original president of Mattel Electronics. And Kalinske knew Rockless. So that is possibly how a meeting could have happened if it not directly through Mattel. Kalinske's adventures in the video game industry, however, turned out to be short-lived, if not existent at all. And after releasing this series of primitive yet highly successful handheld devices, Mattel had decided that video games were the future. And as a result, the company formed an electronics division. This is mixing up the timeline a whole lot here. Good thing we're not doing the notes as an ultimate history of video games. Hired a bunch of brainiacs and took away anything with batteries from Kalinske's team in favor of this brand new department.
Yeah, that's not. No.
Kalinske was forced to watch from the sidelines as Mattel made a big push to redefine itself behind these handheld devices and their dazzling home console, Intellivision. Kalinske was irked by the move. He had helped create this future and thought he deserved the chance to decide how it should turn out. But ultimately, he didn't care all that much. Video games are fascinating, but they did all the work for you. No amount of graphics or gameplay could ever possibly compare to the entertainment value of toys, which, of course, didn't run on batteries, but rather were powered by the world's only unlimited resource: imagination.
Because electronic toys didn't exist at all. Or
I seem to remember toys with batteries.
Yeah, they definitely didn't exist. Besides,
So-
Oh, go ahead.
So wait, quick question. So the meeting that took place with Nakayama, right? So, hold on, I'm trying to get a sense of the timeline. Where are we right now? When did that meeting with
1990.
Nakayama take place?
Tom Kalinski's on a beach in Maui, and
Okay.
Nakayama legitimately tracks him down.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
we only
So
have this
we're
from
in early
Kalinske,
90s.
but it
I'm-
seems like
I-
it happened.
No reason to doubt that. Yeah.
So we're in early 90s, but now we're flashbacking to 80s.
Yeah, this is
Exactly.
building up,
Okay.
Kalinski's background and
Okay, got
what
it.
experience he has with video games.
Yes.
it.
Yes.
Besides, the quick end to his relationship with video games turned out to be for the best. By 1983, it seemed that every company had copied Mattel, yes, who had
Yeah.
copied Atari, and gotten into the gaming racket. The market quickly became oversaturated, and the burgeoning video game industry collapsed. Wow, he did a summary that didn't completely ruin it. Good job. Mattel lost hundreds of millions, Atari lost billions, and Americans from coast to coast lost interest in video games. Okay, now you screwed it up.
Well, lost interest in buying the latest and greatest video games.
Not in video games.
No. But the sentence was in buying the latest and greatest video games.
That's
Oh,
not,
wow.
Wow, you have a
So
different
I
copy.
have a different edition than you do. That's interesting.
Wow. When was yours printed?
Well, I've got a Kindle version.
Okay.
So
Yeah, check the start. There should be a copyright date in there.
yeah, let me see here real fast. Because the Kindle versions can be updated
Right.
after the fact. I don't have a Verso page with a copyright on here. Very interesting. So, maybe he got that message that you just conveyed, that they didn't lose interest in all video games and made a change.
Okay, interesting. Very, very, very interesting. After teetering on bankruptcy, is yours different, or does it
Nope,
still say that?
teetering on
Okay.
is what I have
Yeah.
as well.
Not doesn't quite make sense. Mattel learned their lesson and decided video games were no longer their future. Their future would be the same as their past: dolls and action figures. Except this time,
He-Man.
yes, except this time with TV tie-ins.
Yes.
Kalinske knew that even though Americans had given up on video games, this wasn't the case overseas. And of course, later they did Captain Power, which was an attempt to combine both.
Yes.
While Atari famously buried 3 million copies of their notoriously unsuccessful game,
God.
E.T. the Extraterrestrial,
Oh.
in a New Mexico landfill, the Japanese were flocking to arcades faster than ever.
They were turning away from arcades. They were.
I know.
That is all lies.
Yes. For those who don't know, who haven't caught up on the latest scholarship, and by latest we mean over a decade old, that it wasn't all ETs dumped in that desert. That was just one among many things, and that wasn't even backstock. That was they had never finished producing it at a factory.
Yeah, and the Japanese coin-op industry, because there was never the Pac-Man fever. So after the Space Invaders boom ended, it stayed kind of steady but not exciting. And then by 1983 was starting to decline under increased regulatory scrutiny. And actually, by 1984 was kind of in the doldrums for a bit before Sega helped turn that back around with games like Hang On and Outrun.
So, although Nakayama and Sega seemed to not be welcome in America, the company
no.
continued to survive and enjoy success with a generation of Japanese kids and teens who instinctively took to rapidly blinking, brightly colored arcade screens like moths moving towards a growing light in the dark.
Wait, was that just racism? I'm not sure.
Raising an eyebrow, Kalinske turned to Nakayama.
This new thing you've got is like the Nintendo, right?
Kalinske had never played Nintendo's 8-bit system, dubbed the Famicom in Japan. Nope.
Not exactly.
Shout out to Bro. And the Nintendo Entertainment System, NES, in the United States. But he was certainly aware of its massive success. Everyone was. Nintendo was a small but ambitious Japanese company that, in 1985, dared to try to resuscitate the video game industry in the United States, where it had been dead since the failures of Atari and Mattel.
No video games anywhere.
Nope. Not a single drop. People were scouring the streets looking for just one cartridge, and they could find nothing. It was a drought, Alex. A drought! Against immense resistance. Well, there was
Against
some.
moderate resistance.
The NES finally knocked down the fickle walls of pop culture and proved that video games were not a fad. They were big business. Now, by 1990, less than 5 years later, Nintendo owned 90% of a $3 billion industry. The other 10% of the market was made up of wannabes who had seen Nintendo's success and wanted in on the action. Among this group was Sega and Atari.
Atari was coming back in whether Nintendo did or not.
Yes. Nakayama rolled his eyes. No, it's nothing like Nintendo. Our system is much better. Nintendo is a toy, but what we have, it is like... He trailed off, struggling to find the perfect words. Ugh. Tom, I need you to come with me to Japan. You must see this for yourself.
Sega
come
is
back
not
with me.
just Nintendo in space. It is far more sophisticated.
Indeed. Before Kalinske could find a respectable way to protest, he was saved by his 5-year-old daughter, Ashley, calling his name. In that ghostly way that kids can appear out of thin air, she stood before both men and raised her clasped hands to show him something. After doing so, she noticed Nakayama and took a small step backwards.
Who is you?
Nakayama introduced himself and offered the young girl a smile.
But I thought he didn't smile. Sweetie.
Kalinske
Kalinske- oh,
said
sorry.
to his daughter.
Daddy needs some advice. Would you be willing to give your father some advice?
Ashley loved telling people what to do. She nodded.
Great.
Kalinske said, and paused to figure out how to phrase his question.
So, my friend here wants me to go with him on a little vacation to Japan. He wants to show me something there. But I don't think that's a good idea because, I'm already on a vacation with you, your sisters, and Mommy. What do you think I should do?
Ashley bit her lip and gave this question tremendous thought. As her eyes darted between her father and the man with the funny hair, yes, hair in quotation marks, Kalinske was struck by how fast his daughter was maturing. He felt a pang of pride, followed by a pang of sadness. All this time, she'd been growing up, becoming a person, and he'd been busy chasing his tail at Mattel or at Matchbox. It was going on right before his eyes, and he was missing everything.
She's 5. She's 5.
Ashley interrupted his thoughts.
Who is to go to Japan with his friend?
What? No.
Listen to her, Tom, Nakayama said. She is a wise one. Kalinske looked into his daughter's eyes.
You don't want me here?
Hold on, please.
You cut out there.
But you want to show you something, Daddy.
There we go. She said, exasperated. Kalinske was struck by the wisdom of her kid logic.
Well, if that's what you think, then I'll go.
Okay, whatever.
Ashley said.
Now can I show you my surprise?
Amid all the potential life-changing decision-making, Kalinske had forgotten that his daughter had come over with a surprise in her hands.
Oh, yes, please.
She opened up her hands and revealed a clump of sand.
What is it, sweetie?
A devilish smile crept across her face.
It's a snowball made of sand.
She laughed a few times, then threw it at her father's stomach. At least it wasn't his face, because that would suck.
Not the face, not the face!
Oh,
It
God.
left a little mark just above his bathing suit before falling to the ground. This was too funny for Ashley to handle, and she ran off laughing so hard she practically fell over. Kalinske turned to Nakayama.
Well, guess I'm going to Japan.
You will like what I show you.
I better, because my wife is not going to be happy.
Oh, sorry. I'm messing up here. She will not be happy now, but she will be happy later, Nakayama said, when you become president of Sega.
You're pretty confident, eh?
I do not mean to be so forceful, Nakayama said. I understand this is your family vacation. If you wish to remain at the beach for the rest of the day, we can leave in the morning.
Uh-oh. Are you getting nervous that I might not be as impressed as you first thought?
Kalinske said, sensing a playfulness within himself that had been absent for some time. He felt youthful, curious, perhaps even excited, and he could hear it in his own words. The world seemed slightly bigger, and yet he felt the private pride of being the only one who noticed. He looked at his unexpected guest, wanting to say something to extend the moment.
Nakayama-san, can I tell you a secret?
Yes, Tom. Of course. Kalinske looked over his shoulder before leaning in and confessing the dirty secret to his new friend.
I don't even like the beach.
Nakayama didn't seem to react to the words, but Kalinske had gotten them off his chest.
I mean, I understand why someone would like it. The sun, the sand, the water. I guess that's relaxing, but I just don't feel that way. All that stuff, I think it's...
Nakayama jumped in to finish his sentence. Boring,
Yes,
Kalinske said.
exactly. It's nice and all, but it's boring.
Of course, Tom. Of course, Nakayama echoed. It is boring for people like us. Suddenly, strangely, Kalinske didn't feel so alone. I'm starting to feel it right now.
This is why we're here. ladies
Yes,
and gentlemen.
indeed.
This is why we're here.
If you think that this is good, peak fiction writing right here, then I have a couple books for you to read. Any, just pick one. Nakayama put his arm on Kalinske's shoulder. Okay then, let us now go on a real vacation. Kalinske smiled.
Let me just ask my wife if it's okay.
He turned to Karen, who continued to lie motionless on her back.
You have my permission, honey. Go conquer the world and all that.
She said. Kalinske was caught off guard.
You're awake? You heard everything?
He asked before quickly converting his clumsy surprise into a sly sureness.
Sneaky move, Karen. I'm impressed.
Don't be. You're not as quiet as you think you are.
She said as she lifted up her sunglasses, revealing her shining brown eyes.
Oh, and honey, everyone knows you don't like the beach. It's not exactly a well-guarded secret.
Karen winked at Tom, and with her blessing, he was on his way to Nippon.
I'm just picturing like the end of a Hanna-Barbera episode after she says that thing about the beach. Like everyone's now laughing. Nakayama's laughing. Kalinske's laughing,
Yeah.
and then Ashley comes back and throws another like sandball at his stomach, and
Love it.
yeah.
You see, you should be the
Yes.
screenwriter here. That's
right.
That's the lesson of all this.
Oh,
I guess you
Tom.
can say Tom is taking a mega jet to Japan.
At least it's not the pet jet. Jack Commodore, who will not be appearing in this book.
No.
Also, Crater Gaming has joined us. Welcome, Crater Gaming. In the
Hello,
Twitch
hello.
chat. Good to have you. Okay, Chapter 2, which will be an extended dialogue between Alex and myself.
That's right. We have Tom Kalinske, notable lover of the Game Gear, unemployed.
And Hayao Nakayama, CEO of Sega Enterprises Limited and chairman of the Fire Mike Katz Super PAC. These are all Alex. These are all Alex here.
These are all me. I'm here all night.
You can decide whether that's fortunate or not. Like a shark, or Chapter 2, R&D. Like a shark swimming by a school of fish, a hulking yellow Cadillac DeVille crept past awestruck motorists on Tokyo's busy streets. Kalinske and Nakayama sat in the back of the chauffeured car, watching the people they passed instinctively try to peer through their tinted windows. Guppies.
I mean, Kalinske, maybe he's just good at the public relations thing, but he has never struck me as a pretentious asshole. But, these early chapters here where he's like, men like us, ho, 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 too good for the beach, and like the guppies trying to catch glimpses of our celebrity. I don't know. That just doesn't feel like Tom Kalinske.
Yeah,
he's a Midwestern guy, isn't he? Did he grow up in the Midwest?
I do not know.
I'm looking.
Some of the definitely some of the characterization. It's very much like you need to make Tom out to be a celebrity more than anything.
Yeah, we don't have his date of birth on his Wikipedia page, but he went to the University of Wisconsin undergrad. So my guess is very much that he's a Midwestern guy. I don't think he's elitist like this.
Unlike most wealthy Japanese businessmen who favored the comfort and grace of a limo, town car, or even an upscale Nissan,
Isn't that a contradiction in terms? An upscale Nissan?
Well, once upon a time, maybe there was an upscale Nissan. Nakayama had an entirely different opinion when it came to transportation. He had imported a big, bulky left-hand drive Cadillac that was so large and exotic it made other cars in the street appear to shrink in comparison. Whenever he went out and whatever he did, Nakayama always stood out.
From up there, all the other cars just looked like Hot Wheels.
Yeah, I know a lot of there's stories of people importing foreign cars into Japan. Yamauchi also had a left-hand drive car, which is kind of another interesting parallel between them. I just find it weird that they allow that to happen. They still drive on the left side of the road, but they allow different cars to go on there. It's just funny.
Yeah.
The automotive extension of Nakayama's personality cruised through narrow streets. Nakayama and Kalinske drank whiskey and argued the merits of karaoke. We're not saying it the other way because we are in actual Japan. There's a difference between karaoke and karaoke because they are basically two different things. Like most Japanese, Nakayama held an enormous respect for the activity and considered it an art. And like most Americans, Kalinske thought it was a cheesy thing to do that seemed like a good idea when drunk, but usually ended with regret.
I am just dying to know what Nakayama's go-to showstopper was.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
that would be interesting to know.
But unfortunately, the Nakayama interview was off the record. Because I'm sure Blake asked.
Interestingly enough, in the 60s, Sega did a prototype of karaoke.
That's true.
Something I found in Cashbox. And I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. They didn't really have it in the way that we have karaoke machines, but they would have jukeboxes with lyric sheets where people who were operating the jukebox would get people to sing along with the records with a mic hooked into the jukebox.
A similar idea using the technology of the time.
Indeed. These men may have been from two different worlds, but at least they could appreciate fine whiskey, the brownest of the brown liqueurs. They refilled their glasses, agreed to table the karaoke discussion, and downed their drinks. Kalinske finished a nice, long sip.
I have a question.
Oh, no sip sound effects? Come on,
Oh.
Alex.
I have a question.
Perhaps I have an answer. Kalinske leaned forward.
What about Katz?
What about him?
What happens to him?
To Katz. Kalinske shook his head. He had been waiting for the right time to ask about Katz, which was starting to feel like never. But if he was going to consider taking the job and replacing a friend, they needed to have the conversation.
Oh, don't play it like that. You know we have a history. You had to know I was going to ask about him at some point. So yes. What about Katz?
Katz, of course, was Michael Katz, a no-nonsense pragmatist who was already something of a journeyman in the nascent video game industry. His experience stretched all the way back to 1977. Well, 1975 is...
Yeah,
when
and he was never the marketing director for the handheld games. In fact, by his own admission, he decided not to become a part of Mattel the whole electronics thing after he initiated it, even though he was asked to take part in it, according to his testimony.
When he had served as the marketing director for Mattel's brand new line of LED handheld games, after growing the product line into a $500 million business, it's just like, oh my god.
That did not happen.
Katz moved on to Coleco for their short-lived console venture. Well, he was there mainly for the handhelds, and he was there before.
Yeah, he was there before the console venue. He basically started kind of their first real marketing department. And he did corporate communication stuff and that kind of thing.
After that, he became president of a small, unprofitable computer game company called Epix before moving on to Atari in 1985.
He made Epix profitable. I mean, it's true that they were having financial difficulties when he arrived, but the way the sentence is structured makes it sound like they were also unprofitable when he left, and I don't believe that's true.
Which by then was a shell of its former self, which of course it's not a former self.
It's Trammell Technology Limited under another name.
Also, didn't he join Atari in '86?
No, it was 85.
Okay.
We've got the press releases. Yeah. It was like November. It was like really late in the year.
Okay. Katz had experienced the highs and the lows, and his year as Sega of America's president could probably be most accurately be described as somewhere right in the middle.
The dizzying highs, the terrifying lows, the creamy middle. To quote Homer Simpson.
Indeed. For he is the only quote needed. After a series of gimmicky electronic game systems, like the frigidly named SG-1000, which was cheaply
I
built
am
with
SG-1000. I am here to pleasure you with video games.
No thanks.
I thought of all people, I thought Jonny would be into it.
Yeah, but when you put it like that,
Which was cheaply built with spare off-the-shelf parts. It wasn't spare.
I mean, the most popular microprocessor in Japan and the most popular graphics chip on the market, but sure, spare parts.
Sega's first real foray into the wide world of home video games came with the release of the Master System. No, because the Mark III is not the Master System, for one.
And the SG-1000 was also home video games.
Yeah.
So,
And it was,
um,
it did decently. That's why they made sequels.
this is just getting weird.
This was their own NES-like 8-bit console, intended to rival the staggering success of Nintendo, but it was not exactly the triumph they had in mind. The Master System was released first in Japan in 1985, again that's the Mark III, and then in North America in 1986, but in less than 2 years, it was clear that Sega wasn't going to be able to make a dent on the force that was Nintendo, playing with power. Nakayama decided that if they couldn't win the battle on the 8-bit terrain, then they would move the location of the war, and this time at least have the advantage of being there first. I mean, they also...
That metaphor didn't land very well.
And also not true, because they did try to win in the 8-bit market by going
Yes.
with Tonka, and that was a
Yes.
thing.
Yeah, it sure was.
They quickly and unceremoniously retired their Master System and shifted their attention to the next generation of video games, 16 bits, twice as powerful as the NES. Oh my god, this sentence...
Did they forget to tell Europe about that whole retiring the Master System thing?
I mean, even in America, like one of
No,
Al
I know they
Nilsen-
were still selling them in like 1992, I think is when it was finally
Yeah, like
discontinued,
Al
something like
Nilsen, he said one of the big things when he was setting up their magazine, Sega Visions, was like,
Yeah.
we need to communicate with our Master System owners.
Yeah.
Because there was still stuff coming out.
I mean, Sonic the Hedgehog came out in Europe on Master System.
Yes.
Just saying.
And also, 16 bits does not mean twice as powerful.
Do the math.
You.
Yeah.
Again, they created and released their cutting-edge 16-bit system first in Japan, where it was called the Mega Drive, and the next in North America, where they dubbed their technological dynamo Genesis. And who helped launch the Genesis, everybody? No? Nobody?
Michael Katz.
No. The celebrity who helped launch the Genesis.
Danny DeVito.
No, only
Lasorda?
if. Only.
Michael
Nope.
Jackson.
Nope. Even though Michael Jackson was already working with Sega at the time, he did not help.
I need to think.
The launch of the Genesis was headlined by one Mr. Donald J. Trump.
What?
It's true.
Oh,
That's right. I
yeah,
remember
yeah.
seeing a picture of that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He is.
Oh.
I don't think I've ever seen him like doing anything related to video games.
There is a clip of him, like, he's basically doing a fundraiser thing during it, but that he was the celebrity who helped launch the Genesis.
Biblical.
In October 1989, Katz was hired to make the Genesis a smash hit in America. If it was his responsibility, I would love to know how he finagled that. It might have been Rosen's responsibility, because Rosen showed up at the event too. In Japan, the Mega Drive had achieved mild success with its initial release, and this gave the powers that be high hopes for their American counterparts. So high, in fact, that Nakayama came up with the rallying cry, "Hyakman Dai!" 1 million units. Despite the shadow of Nintendo, Nakayama fully expected that Katz would be able to sell more than 1 million Genesis systems by the end of his first year on the job. Katz had tried his best to reach this goal and to make a name for the Genesis, but after that year was up, he had only sold about 350,000 units, and Sega still lacked an identity. Not great results, but not terrible either. The problem was that Nakayama did not think he was the right man for the job. He had good ideas, but he lacked follow-through and the grace to get things done. Big talk, that's what he was, and nothing personified this better than the ad campaign he had chosen. Genesis does what Nintendo don't. Not only did this bother Nakayama-san because competitive advertising was frowned upon in Japan, but even more so because it was just an empty promise. Genesis does what Nintendo don't? What? Not make money? Katz knew
Burn.
what Sega was not, but Nakayama believed that Kalinske knew what Sega could, should, and would be. Now, let's speak on some other reasons why they might have been wanting to oust Katz on this.
Well, there was a bit, and actually, I first learned about this through Console Wars. So credit where credit is due. There was actually quite a bit of intrigue and rivalry between Rosen and Nakayama, and Rosen was kind of the person responsible for overseeing everything that was going on in the U.S. And Katz was actually Rosen's hire. And I think Nakayama was extra disappointed with the situation because it wasn't his chosen person that was in charge. And according to Katz, when I interviewed him, he said that Rosen actually apologized to him afterwards about how everything went down with his dismissal. So there was a little bit, I think, of that personal rivalry going on there.
Katz had his chance. Kalinske raised an eyebrow.
His chance? A year?
He was only hired for the job until the right person came along.
Still, 1 year?
He thinks he's running a movie studio, not a video game company. He spends my money like a madman, then calls it an investment. He thinks everything is an investment. Is this foreshadowing? Because that's what it. That's. This is probably not Blake's intention, but
Yeah, no, because that is definitely not the character of Tom Kalinske as portrayed in Console War that you're referring to
Yes.
there. But yes, there is some irony here for those of
Mhm.
us who know.
Katz had spent a lot of money to secure deals with celebrities, highlighted by a $1.7 million for Joe Montana, and most recently, boxer James Buster Douglas, the current heavyweight champion of the world. He has no vision for the company, no identity. So all he does is go out and try to buy one. Kalinske considered this.
Well, Nintendo has Mario, so naturally you guys should have your own mascot character. Someone to crush that little plumber.
See? You get it, Tom, Nakayama said, so thrilled that someone else saw the world the same way. I have tasked our most loyal employees of coming up with our own Mario. You will be astounded by their work, I assure you, he said, his voice vibrating with excitement. Katz doesn't understand. He just likes to spend money.
I like how it's like I like it. It's like I put our most loyal employees, like not I put our best employees or our most creative employees. It's like our most loyal employee. It's like what the hell?
And like, you know, supposing, you know, the idea behind this conversation, you know, and you know, obviously Harris is anti-Japan in a lot of this.
Yes.
You know, anti-Sega in Japan.
Right. Not anti the Japanese people, but anti Sega enterprises in Japan.
Yeah, but like, you know, if you're trying to follow this to a logical conclusion, then what does Nakayama expect him to do? Especially given that he, you know, he doesn't have any product control. He starts it, and we'll get to how this book does not cover that, but, like, if you're like, well, the product is wrong, is kind of the summation of this, then what's he supposed to do? Because he doesn't have control over making product.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways. While Nakayama's accusation that Katz has spent a lot of money was true, the insinuation wasn't exactly fair. Katz knew that the secret formula to selling 1 million units lay in making popular games. If people had craved the software, then they would undoubtedly buy the hardware. This had been Nintendo's approach, dazzle the market with the much-talked-about hits like Super Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah, that was their call. definitely
Mutant Ninja
their call.
Turtles.
And as a result, seduce an entire generation into buying the NES. And you could put
Mr.
throw-
Arakawa, are you trying to seduce me?
Really should have thrown Double Dragon in that list as well. Unfortunately, this approach presented a problem for Katz because Nintendo held an iron grip on its software developers. If designers wanted their game on the NES, the Nintendo had them sign a exclusive agreement with a stringent non-complete clause.
Then why were Double Dragon and Commando on the Atari? I
Uh,
mean, yes, there was a non-compete, but it's more complicated than that.
So if Sega got a game, there was no way Sega could offer it on their system. And given Nintendo's monstrous success, why would anyone choose Sega over Nintendo?
That's more of the reason than the exclusivity.
And what about the Sega games that appeared on Nintendo, huh?
I mean, Sega's got to eat too.
Katz's solution was to hitch Sega's wagon to household names, believing the association between Sega and the likes of Joe Montana and Buster Douglas would bring about a certain level of respect and legitimacy.
You know Katz, though. He's a builder.
Kalinske said. As much as he understood where Nakayama was coming from, he had a soft spot for Katz. They had become buddies at Mattel. They played tennis together, and their wives got along.
Katz is slow and steady. I thought that's what wins the race, no?
Also, like, does Nakayama know Katz? Did Katz know Nakayama at all before this position?
Probably not. I mean, obviously by now they've known each other because, they communicated. But I don't see why their paths would have crossed, really.
This is not a fable, Tom. Nakayama shook his head. I want you to take this job because you will be able to do it better.
I like breaking the fourth wall here. This is not a fable, and console war. It's just there's some irony there. Again, I appreciate the flattery, but I don't know the first thing about video games. I know toys. I'm a toy guy.
No, Tom. You are a salesman. Kalinske thought about this as Nakayama refilled his glass and the Cadillac DeVille continued along, turning heads on the streets of Tokyo.
This is like the script to a biopic or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He really wanted, in all seriousness, because he said so himself, he really wanted to make a movie. He had a three-pronged thing. He wanted to do the book, a documentary, and an actual movie or television series. He wrote this to be the screenplay, and he had probably been better off writing straight nonfiction to convince someone to turn this into something, because, There was a plan to do so at one time, but I think the pandemic probably killed it off because there's
I think
been
it was
no
in
news on that.
2021 that it was announced that things were going forward.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that Nakayama's favorite is Suntory? Is it Suntory time when you're with Nakayama?
Could be.
They were dropped off in front of Sega headquarters, which Kalinske was surprised to find was bland and innocuous. It looked almost like a college dorm complex, openly nondescript and painted in a crusty, faded-looking yellow-white. It's not yellow-white, it's just white. Hold on. Let me see if I have a photo of this.
Eggshell.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this one. That's not yellow. There's no yellow to that. The only difference here was that at the top of this humble 10-story building, the name Sega was emblazoned in blue capital letters. All right, time to count the floors. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's 13 floors.
Oh, busted!
Nakayama led Kalinske into the building, which somehow turned out to be even more unspectacular on the inside. Drab lighting, crowded stations and uninspiring windowless conference rooms. Let's see.
Hmm.
I mean, it's the 80s. It's definitely drab, but there are windows.
But probably not in the conference rooms.
Yeah, which would make sense. This is a conference room right here.
Yeah. Certainly no windows in the shot.
Indeed. As Nakayama introduced his great white hope to this, maybe not the best, probably not the best way to put that.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I hear you're a racist now, Nakayama. Let's see your opinions on
Foreign
that,
savior
then.
powers activate!
To the most senior of the 100 or so employees, Kalinske was already having second thoughts. Also, Crater Gaming mentioned, Katz just wants to spend money, he said from the back seat of his imported Cadillac. Good catch. Good catch.
This is that fanfic, right?
Something like that.
Are we taking turns, or is it just you?
Well, I'm reading the narration, and then when there's bit parts, people can jump in. There will be more next chapter.
Yeah. The first couple of chapters don't have many, but other chapters have a lot more people in them.
They made their way into a boxy gray elevator where Nakayama attempted to reassure his now skeptical guests. It gets better.
No, it's fine.
Yes, this is in all of cinema, this would be one of the top awkward elevator scenes. We can be assured. It will never surpass the Evangelion one, though. The elevator stopped on the 3rd floor, and Nakayama led Kalinske into what he considered the crown jewel of Sega's operation, the top secret R&D lab, where long tables were overrun by large computers, unrecognizable mechanical tools, and several televisions that had been taken apart. Kalinske felt like he had entered an evil scientist's lair. That is, if the evil scientist in question had planned to take over the world by means of video game domination. But
sir,
were they wearing lab coats?
A new piece of hardware every week.
Sir, this is an Arby's.
Sir, this is a Yarabashi camera.
I do like those photos that I've seen of like different manufacturers or developers from like the 80s and 90s, and where they've had those jackets with like the logo patched onto them. I do think those look cool.
If you go to like an American plastics company, a lot of offices still look like that.
Really? That's interesting. What was I gonna say? Oh no, there's nothing.
Okay. Nakayama proudly escorted Kalinske around the room, introducing him to all sorts of gadgets and gizmos that seemed too small and sophisticated to actually exist. The marvelous graphics moving at race car speed. These seemed less like games than they did playable dreams. This stuff was light years ahead of what Kalinske remembered from his days at Mattel.
In a world of pure gamification.
Love it. Nakayama pulled him over to a small station and handed him a little black device. This is called the Game Gear. It will come out here in October, and then sometime next year in America. We stole it from Nintendo and from Atari. Citizen helped us. That's a whole thing. The Game Gear felt great in Kalinske's hands, and as Nakayama turned it on, the screen flooded with graphics that seemed too good to be true.
I mean, it's basically a Master System. We've seen these graphics before.
Kalinske didn't know much about Nintendo's home console, but he was familiar with their handheld device, the Game Boy. Like everyone else, he had been caught up in the whirlwind of Tetris, the addictive puzzle game that came with the Game Boy. The Game Gear featured a similar
It's no
game
columns,
called
I'll tell you that.
Columns. There we go. Which seemed to Kalinske to be equally as addictive. Yet instead of staring at the dull yellow coloring of the Game Boy, he was playing a game with vivid, gorgeous colors. Like,
but did he smack himself with a raccoon to get those colors?
So, but but it only lasted like 45 minutes.
Nakayama wanted to show him more, but Kalinske couldn't stop fixating on the Game Gear. You take it, Nakayama said with a nudge. You take it and show it to your daughters. They will love it so much. Eventually, Nakayama pried him away and dazzled him with more glimpses of tomorrow. A CD-based device that played games with near movie-quality graphics. A pair of 3D glasses that could be worn to bring certain games to life, which had already come out, so...
Yeah.
And some kind of hefty virtual reality headset. I don't know what this means.
Yeah, it seems like it would be a little early for that, but I don't know.
They might have been toying around with something.
Could have been, yeah.
But I don't know. This might be implying that this is the Genesis one. What's it called, Dilly?
Sega VR.
Sega VR.
That's
but
all
it's
it's
not.
called. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. They said way too early for that to exist.
That's what
Yeah, no, that was like that was like 93. So
yeah. Finally, the tour concluded in front of Nakayama's crown jewel, the Sega Genesis.
Mega Drive. They're in Japan.
I know. You're right. You're right. Kalinske stared at this beautiful black beast. It was sleek and seductive, with graphics and gameplay.
I'm just picturing the scene now in Cool Hand Luke, where the woman's washing the car, except Nakayama is washing the Genesis.
He wondered how the hell Katz had struggled to sell this. I mean, it did have a different design. Yeah, they had 16-bit in gold on the front in Japan.
Yes.
Nakayama watched Kalinske's eyes widen like a kid who not only was inside a wondrous candy shop, but had just been told that he now owned it.
He's doing a fucking Tex Avery take when he sees this thing.
You'll buy American $2.
Humana.
$2 American. You buy what?
Kalinske took a moment to compose himself.
It's okay.
Ah, yes, sure it is, Nakayama said. Shall we go somewhere more private to continue our discussion?
He must have paid the $2. Anyway.
Kalinske put down the controller he had been inspecting. He couldn't get over how comfortably everything fit into his hands. It was as if they were designing specifically for designed specifically for him. Yeah, part of the problem with the
hands are
Genesis
usually designed for
controller-
people. Yes.
Yes.
It's
Part of
called
the problem-
intelligent design.
Well, yeah, not that there was a whole lot of that in the very beginning, but yeah, the problem with the Genesis controller, it's definitely too small, and reaching your thumb over the 3 buttons is kind of eh.
I was about to say that's a different kind of.
But
controller.
apparently Kalinske has very tiny hands because this was made just for him.
He left with Nakayama trying his best to hide his boyish enthusiasm. He didn't know exactly where they were headed, but for the first
His
time in a
boner.
while, he felt
Yeah.
excited about whatever would come next.
Oh my god, get a room.
Well, they are. Remember, they're going someplace more private. They are getting a room.
All right, we're
The
going
story
to...
of Tom Kalinske, a eulogy.
All right, we're going to pause here for a second. I'm going to get some water and things, but we will be right back.
I'm gonna get some cognac.
There we go. We are back once again. Here to make chaos, to make love, to make peace with the fact that this book exists.
To make more profit than the Saturn.
That won't be too difficult.
Go on, scribe.
All right, we are on to Chapter 3, The Story of Tom Kalinske. We have Hayao Nakayama, CEO of Sega Enterprises Limited, and a useful framing device.
We also have Tom Kalinske, Mattel executive turned unemployed beach bum, a subject ripe for hagiography.
Then we have Ruth Handler, co-founder of Mattel, likes a man who takes charge. Also star of the Barbie movie. Who wants to take Ruth Handler?
I'll be Ruth Handler.
All right. And we have unnamed Geisha girl, present to spice up the chapter. Who will take that one?
I'll take it.
All right.
Howdy.
Let us get a move on then. Nakayama took Kalinske to a popular hostess bar downtown. Despite the sizable crowd of businessmen, their sporadic drunken chuckles, and the constant flirtatious giggling of the pale-faced woman dressed as naive schoolgirls, the place offered a certain level of solitude. Perhaps it was the dim lighting, or maybe it was the collective sentiment that everyone there seemed to want nothing more than a moment of privacy and had no interest in getting entangled in the business of anyone else. What exactly are your concerns? Nakayama asked, as one of the bar's geisha girls strolled over to him and Kalinske with small glasses of sake.
For starters, I'm not too thrilled about the idea of uprooting my family.
Sega of America's headquarters were in San Francisco, and Kalinske would move his family there from Los Angeles. Northern California is the place to be. That's where things happen. What else? Kalinske sipped his sake.
What else?
Where's
A
the
lot of
sipping?
things.
Where's the sipping?
I did it.
Alex?
I did it.
Okay,
I did
didn't
it.
hear it.
What else? Well, I mean, what else? A lot of things.
Nakayama skeptically squinted his eyes. I think there's that beneath a lot of things is just one thing. So tell me, what is the problem? Perhaps Nakayama was right. Perhaps the stresses that came to mind were just tiny planets of anxiety that were all orbiting a single sun.
Okay.
Kalinske said, gathering his concerns. You know, like the guy who can't hold all the limes. They're just all concerns.
Or his limes.
I don't want to put in everything I have only to watch the carpet get pulled out from under me. I want to be able to try things. I want to be able to fail. I want to be able to make this exactly what I think it ought to be and not have to explain myself every step of the way. Basically, I don't want Mattel to happen again.
Kalinske abruptly finished, realizing that he'd struck a nerve that had been buried for years. Nakayama finished his glass of sake. Okay, fine, he said. You come to work for me, and I let you do things your way. This is the deal. No tricks.
No take-backsies.
These were the magic words Kalinske had been waiting for, but when they finally came, he was momentarily distracted by something unusual across the bar. Do you have an answer? Nakayama asked. Kalinske heard the words, but his mind was locked on a well-dressed man sitting at a table about 20 feet away. This man, whose elegant outfit screamed success, was surrounded by beautiful women, scheming friends, and copious amounts of alcohol. Sounds like a day for Hubs right here. Yet despite these temptations, the well-dressed man was completely entranced by only one thing. A Game Boy. As his fingers jabbed at the buttons of Nintendo's handheld console, nothing else in the world mattered. I am so down. This is complete crap. This definitely did not happen.
No.
Tom, Nakayama said, trying not to sound too curious.
I need to think about it.
Kalinske replied, and then he pulled out the Game Gear he had received earlier, as if this might somehow hold the answer.
Sadly, the battery life had already run out, and there were no answers to be had.
Oh, jeez. That would be perfect. If you wanted to make this a black comedy, there you go. Could he seriously see himself jumping into the video game industry? Did he actually believe he had what it took to topple Nintendo? And for that matter, did anyone? As he considered these questions and thought more about the well-dressed man, the sharp-dressed man, he should have snuck that in there. Ready to go crazy about a sharp dress. Anyway, the machine came alive in his hands, and Tom Kalinske's life flashed before his eyes.
Isn't that what happens when you're about to die? Was the Game Gear actually like a Nintendo robot trained to assassinate him?
The battery exploded the minute he pulled it out.
Right there.
This is a death dream. The rest of this book is.
Yeah. Yes.
The popular theory. Suddenly, his mind was flooded with the sights, sounds, and feelings of being a little boy, racing a red die-cast toy car up and down his legs in the back seat of the family's station wagon, wedged uncomfortably between his brother and sister as his family moved from Iowa to Chicago. There you go.
Yep, Midwest. I knew it.
I'm just imagining this being like a sort of acid sequence or something.
Yeah.
The family had moved a lot during his childhood, which was difficult on a small boy. But he remembered it being a little easier because he always had that toy car by his side. He loved it not only because it was always there for him, but because he had built it. He had built it from a kit and painted it the exact color he wanted. He savored so much being the creator of something. Yeah, this does feel very Citizen Kane. It really does. He remembered liking Chicago, mostly because he was only 5 years old, liked life, and thought that life was Chicago.
Is life Chicago, Ethan? You're the
No.
resident expert.
No.
There you have it, folks. Life is not Chicago.
But then his father got a new job at a water treatment facility in Tucson, Arizona. And the family moved again. Tom had been nervous, but he had his toy car, which he felt kept him safe from everything changing around him. His family stayed in Tucson for good. His family stayed in Tucson for good, and that allowed Tom to dive headfirst into the thick desert heat and become many things. A Boy Scout, an athlete, a baseball card collector. What is he, starting a cult? Is that what we're...
And a midnight toker.
Oh man, this is just a musical reference chapter right here. When he was 12 years old, his mother convinced him that he had a beautiful singing voice and dragged him down to the so-called Temple of Music and Art. There he auditioned and was accepted into the prestigious Tucson Boys Chorus, whose past members included George Chakiris and John Denver. I don't know who George Chakiris is at all.
No idea.
No.
Aren't you the choir guy?
These aren't choir guys. John Denver's not a choir guy.
Yeah, that's true. He soon discovered that he was really good at singing, which filled him with red-hot ambition. Yeah, we need a Smith Kalinske duet. That's what we need. Within 9 months, Tom was promoted to the chorus's traveling group.
Oh, the shareholder blues.
Over the next 5 years, he toured the entire country, sang on the Ed Sullivan Show, performed at the White House, and traveled through Australia, Mexico, and Canada while cutting albums for Capitol Records. He cut them himself, don't you know?
That's
He
right.
was there with the scissors.
I used his car, ran the car over the vinyl.
There you go. He had like twisted metal like style, things
Yes.
installed on the wheels
Exactly.
just for this purpose. That period of his life had moved fast, and it was still a whirl in his mind all these years later. But the velocity had served him well. He returned home full-time to Arizona for his junior year of high school and made heads turn with his blazing speed. He joined the track team and earned a scholarship to the University of Wisconsin, but lost it junior year when he got injured in a car accident. Even now, so many years later, he can still viscerally feel not only the fragments of the pain, emotional as well as physical, but also how his now-or-nothing persona had emerged at that time. Without the scholarship, he needed to make money in order to pay for classes and graduate. So at 22, with his back up against the wall, that red-hot ambition returned, steering him towards marketing. Wait, 22 and he was a junior in college?
Yeah. Who knows?
Okay.
I saw that, but who knows?
Interesting. Tom Kalinske and his friend Jonathan Pellegrin had both recently taken an advertising class and decided that male students were a very hard demographic to reach. So Kalinske and Pellegrin decided to start a magazine called Wisconsin Man. Wisconsin Man! That was specifically designed to reach male students. The magazine would feature stories about sports, cars, women, and how to do things like ski, barbecue, or interview for jobs. No cheese. Are you serious here?
No.
Wisconsin Man does not
No
get any
cheese.
cheese.
I'm
very
stands alone, Ethan.
Local and national advertisers recognized the value in targeting the readers of Wisconsin Man and paid handsomely for the space of the space in the magazine. This experience proved to Tom that he was capable of bigger things, so he enrolled in business school at the University of Arizona to study marketing. This time, to pay for school, he wrote and sold ads for a local company that owned radio and television stations. In 1968, his writing, resume, and colorful life experiences earned him a job with J. Walter Thompson, a renowned New York advertising firm. His responsibility was to come up with new product lines for existing customers within a couple of months. Kalinske made a name for himself with the work he did on the Miles Laboratory account. Yes, this is just one long narrated sequence.
This is all happening while Nakayama is sitting there in the hostess bar wondering if Kalinske is having a stroke.
I mean, he is looking at a Game Gear.
Yeah, in the bar, Tom is just like, give me water.
Nakayama's just like, check please.
Oh god, the car accident. Oh god, the car accident. Oh my god.
Of course,
Miles Laboratory.
Of course, in recent years, Tom survived a stroke as well.
Yeah,
so
no, I mean, none
he's
of
gone
this
through
is
quite a
any
lot.
disrespect to Tom. But, yeah, it's just the writing style and
the
the framing here.
presentation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Miles Laboratory was a health products company that had risen to prominence in the 1940s with their one-a-day multivitamins. In the 1960s, they wanted to expand their business to children and develop Chalks, the first chewable vitamin. Though parents liked the idea of providing supplemental nutrition to their children, kids avoided vitamins because they seemed to be too much like medicine. To change the minds of this fickle demographic, Kalinske suggested that the vitamins be shaped like characters that kids liked, and arranged for licensing rights to a recently syndicated cartoon from the animation company Hanna-Barbera. This deal resulted in the creation of the successful new product called Flintstones Chewable Vitamins. Who here in this room used Flintstones chewable vitamins?
I
I
did.
had Valium and stuff.
I did.
Not regularly, but I've certainly had them.
Yeah, as a kid, they got them on me.
My parents just gave me Ritalin.
There we go. That explains a lot. As these memories flooded back to Kalinske, see again, he's just sitting there. He couldn't help but feel a certain retroactive naturalness Naturalness.
Well, hold on. Yeah. Hold on. What's this? Let's go back on that phrase again. A certain retroactive naturalness.
So,
Wouldn't genuine character be a much better way of phrasing that?
Yeah, probably.
Do
if
you,
that's
are,
what he's
have
getting
you
at.
written a New York Times best-selling book like Console Wars? I think not.
No, but I'm a lizard on the internet. That should count for something.
There we go. To the trajectory of his... Wait. He couldn't feel a certain retroactive naturalness to the trajectory his life had taken. And
in other words, now it seems like it was inevitable, okay? There
you go.
Now his life felt inevitable. I fixed it.
There you go. And recognized the confidence that had been a constant presence throughout his life. That confidence had never been more on display than in 1970 when Senator Margaret Chase Smith arranged for a series of subcommittee hearings to investigate the advertising tactics to sell high-sugar products that were heavily fortified with vitamins and minerals. The allegation was that advertisers attempted to create a false perception that the health hazards of products, such products like cereal, juices, and candy like chewable vitamins were offset by the added nutrients. During the hearings, Kalinske took to the stand, where he was reprimanded by Senator Smith for essentially selling candy.
They don't have a stand. It's not a court. They sit at a table,
Yes.
and they are under oath, but it's not a stand.
So, Mr. Kalinske, she said, pointing a finger at him, do you really think selling drugs to children is a good idea? Kalinske knew that he was supposed to sit up there and transform himself into a fountain of apologies, but with the finger pointed in his face, he decided to opt for the truth.
They're great! I think it's a great idea. 50% of America's children are malnourished, and frankly, I don't care how they get their vitamins as long as they get them. We're helping kids stay healthy.
The room went silent. After he was dismissed from the stand,
There's no stand.
He was approached by executives from Mattel who had been watching the proceeding and were impressed with his performance. They offered him a job as product manager of their preschool business.
Meanwhile, back in the bar, they'd called an ambulance for Tom because he'd collapsed on the floor.
My guess is that's not true. Because he does a lot of this compression, and there's one coming up in just a second that I know for a fact is not true because I talked to Kalinske. But my guess is the Mattel executives saw his testimony, in some way, shape, or form, and then, like days or weeks later, got in touch with him.
I mean, technically, this sentence leaves that open because it just says after.
Right.
But
could be years.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tom, we love what you said about the malnourished children. Like, you're so right. Like, you're so smart.
That was 15 years ago.
now it's down to like 30, man.
2 years later, he was invited to speak with the founder and president of Mattel,
co-founder,
and experienced his first career-defining moment. Deft, that's you.
Oh, sorry. Career-defining moment. People are saying that Barbie's done, finished, kaput.
Ruth Handler proclaimed in her usual raspy, exasperated, yet somehow optimistic voice.
Barbie just had her first ever down year after year. And you know what that means. In this business, once you dip, you drop, and you don't stop.
She finished her rant with a powerful but gentle nod of the head.
Powerful but
People
gentle.
are saying it's time to kill Barbie and devote our resources to other things. What do you say?
An idealistic but unpolished 27-year-old Tom Kalinske stood in front of her desk, wearing a pleasant smile, as he tried to make sense of what he just heard. Hold on, let me pull up the Kalinske image again.
Young Tom, young Master Tom.
Look at that.
Classic Tom.
That
Oh.
There's
I mean, they called him Sega's Ken doll for a reason, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way at all. The man had some looks.
Present.
Indeed. He
Yeah,
desperately wanted
He
to impress his
desperately-
boss, the living legend responsible for making Barbie the most famous plastic doll ever. Okay, at least he didn't say Solo
Mr.
created Barbie.
Yeah, I mean, a certain Mr. Ryan.
Well, I mean, she was responsible for making.
She's the
Barbie.
reason it happened. That's absolutely true. But it's not like she built it with her own two hands.
You know, what other plastic dolls were there at that point? Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, no, I mean it was huge, and Handler's role was very critical to it.
Yeah.
To avoid saying the wrong thing, Tom continued to hide behind the shield of his smile.
Nope.
Ruth said, her eyes unflinching.
You don't get to where I am without becoming fluent in the language of smiles. And that one you've got slapped across your face right now says, I have no idea how to answer her question, so I should try to remind her that I'm handsome and charming. Am I right?
Tom chuckled, and this time he gave her a very different kind of smile.
Oh my.
Okay then, that's much better. But just because I called you charming and handsome doesn't mean you're off the hot seat. Now answer the question, mister.
Sure, Ruth Handler talked.
Hot seat reference.
Well, Ruth,
He said, almost surprised to hear himself sound so calm.
that's the craziest thing I ever heard. Barbie done? No way.
Kalinske shook his head profoundly, now controlling the room with his every word, gesture, and expression, a gift that would reveal itself to him and more over the years.
Look, I think it's fair to say that both you and I are in good health and seem destined to live nice, long lives. And let me tell you something. Barbie will be around long after you and I are gone.
Oh, is that a fact?
She asked.
It is.
He said confidently. Ruth's eyes zeroed in on his.
What makes you so sure that people won't get bored of a doll, albeit a fetching blonde one?
A tiny smile delicately bent half of Ruth's face. She wasn't the only one fluent in the language of smiles, and Tom knew what it meant. Genuine curiosity, the potential for an impulsive decision.
Mrs. Handler, are you trying to seduce me? They won't get bored.
He said.
Because Barbie's not just a doll. She's an idea. A promise to girls of all ages that you can fulfill any dream or fantasy out there. Through Barbie, a girl can be anything she wants to be.
Yeah, Tom, we saw the movie, okay?
This was before the movie.
I know. Kalinske nodded slowly.
And yeah, it doesn't hurt that she's not bad looking.
Of course, now that has become a whole question in itself of the good-lookingness of Barbie. Ruth emphatically slapped her desk.
Great, that's the right answer. You're promoted. You're now the marketing director on Barbie.
Without missing a beat or giving him a moment to gloat, she shooed him away.
You've convinced me. Get out of my office and go convince the rest of the world.
All right. Now, got to stop there. Now, other than the fact that obviously the dialogue is ridiculous, this is an example, a known example where Harris is deliberately smushing things together for dramatic effect. Because I have interviewed Tom Kalinske, and I actually interviewed Tom after Console Wars came out. So, he mentioned the fact that, things were, a lot of things were exaggerated and compressed and whatnot. And so it is true that he had a conversation with Ruth Handler where she was like, is Barbie finished? And he was like, no, Barbie's not finished. And it is true that impressed Ruth so much that like 2 weeks later, give or take, she promoted him to the head of Barbie marketing. But it was not, in the moment, slam the desk, you're promoted. That is a Harris fabrication.
You got Maxie.
That's right.
That's spunk. I hate spunk.
Hey, just get a towel. You'll be okay.
Yeah, who in here has not seen the Barbie movie, by the way? Everyone has? Good. was good.
Yeah,
But it was funny that Ruth Handler was made out to be a very laudatory figure. Ultimately, they do mention the illegal stuff, but
chain smoking SEC fraudster,
Mm.
who also built one of the most powerful toy companies in the world. I mean, not to
It
forget
takes
that
a lot
part.
to be a doll. He knew that well.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he did. He revived the Barbie line with the novel idea of segmenting the market. Instead of simply selling one doll per season, Mattel would offer a multitude of Barbies for differing interests at diverse price points and targeted at girls of different ages along the spectrum. There would be
And
a
now
twist
with
in...
a hat.
Indeed. Malibu Stacy with a hat, yes.
Yes.
That basically Tom Kalinske invented that joke.
Yes.
There would be a twist and turn Barbie, ballerina Barbie, Hawaiian Barbie, and even President Barbie.
Now, yeah. Yeah. No, go on. Sorry.
In addition, Mattel would vigorously expand the line for her family and friends with the likes of Big Business Ken and Grown Up Skipper, a version of Barbie's younger sister whose breasts would get larger at the waist. Would get larger and waist would shrink with the rotation of her left arm.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that one because that one was a bit of a failure.
Hey, predicted Ozempic.
Looking to fill every possible segment of the market, Kalinske even started a line of high-priced collectible Barbie dolls, which came with limited edition fashions by famous designers like Oscar de la Renta and Bob Mackie. As a result of this new approach, annual sales soon skyrocketed from $42 million per year to $550 million by the end of the decade.
In fairness, there was a lot of inflation in that decade.
That was the Retronauts guy, right? Bob Mackie?
That one goes over my head.
Never mind.
Kalinske's ability to sell particularly came in handy when he met a woman who made his mind feel both empty and infinite. At the 1979 Toy Fair, there she was, a striking young woman hired to dress as Barbie and present the doll's latest accessories at the Mattel booth. Karen Panitz was her name, a New York actress who'd recently had a bit part in Saturday Night Fever. She tried to resist his charm, but that didn't last long, because it was obvious that he understood her, and she very much understood him. It wasn't quite love at first sight, but what they had was much better than that. A romance built to last through many splendors and tragedies of life, and in 1983, they married.
Just a reminder, we are still at the club.
Mm-hmm.
The gentleman at the next booth is still playing the Game Boy. Nakayama is still wondering what is going on.
So this was, I believe, the only photo of them on their Hawaii vacation.
Yes. And right in
like
those
he's holding
bushes
her
there, you can't
hostage.
see him, but Hayao Nakayama is lurking.
Even though
I'll make in the presence of Sega if it's the last thing I do.
Even though he had it all, there was always a need for more. More ideas, more discoveries, and more to do. The insatiability was always his favorite part. He's hungering. He hungers. So when Mattel needed a new toy that could replicate for boys what Barbie did for girls, Kalinske rose to the challenge. He commissioned the development of a heroic male action figure, testing out spacemen, military heroes, firefighters, and superheroes everything under the testosterone-infused sun. Sorry, I tripped over that. The concept that was tested strongest was a muscular, sword-wielding, brown-haired conqueror.
There have been literally actually whole books written about the creation of He-Man, and Tom Kalinske ain't in them. Now, obviously, he was an executive at the company at the time, but again, he was not in charge of Mattel Toys. That was still Ray Wagner. And yeah, he is not in those books.
I forget,
the creation of He-Man.
Did Toys That Made Us do He-Man?
They did, yes.
Okay. I think I just didn't watch that season. But yeah, good documentary series, though, if
Awesome.
You're interested in this toy stuff. Kalinske asked the designer to make the hero's hair blonde, and then he would have his team. Then he and his team worked on digging deeper into the character and coming up with his personality, backstory, and supporting cast. The end result was a unique universe for its master, their new character, He-Man.
He-Man. That's how you have to say it.
But it's lowercase, so.
Oh, ooh.
So, He-Man.
You're right.
I pronounce it Hemin. Hemin.
The action figure became one of the year's top-selling toys and quickly rose to the top of the character popularity charts. This led to the creation of a comic series, collectible trading cards, and the hugely popular animated TV show.
He-Man and the Masters of the Universe! There it is.
If only I had that queued up, then we could. Though we would probably get takedowns, but anyway.
Yes.
Between Barbie, He-Man, and everything in between, people would say that Kalinske had the magic touch. But he doesn't even know what a Nintendo is.
And a lot of that wasn't him. Like, there were people on the Barbie line that were more responsible. Yes, he sold them. I mean, obviously he was part of the team, but there were, when you see documentaries about Barbie or about He-Man or about any of these, Kalinske is really not mentioned in them. And lots of other people are. So just,
I believe he showed up in the Barbie one of Toys That Made Us.
No, it's not that they didn't talk to him. I didn't mean he doesn't show up like at all. I'm just saying he's never the center of the story, and I'm sure he was part of the success, but this is probably overselling it just slightly is what I'm saying.
He liked when people said it, even though he knew it wasn't true. There was no such thing as a magic touch, and it wouldn't have mattered if there was, because the only thing it takes to sell toys, vitamins, or magazines is the power of story. That was the secret. That was the whole trick, to recognize the world as is nothing but chaos, and the only thing holding it and us together are stories. Here is your philosophy from Blake J. Harris, author of Console Wars.
This line, according to my Kindle copy, has been highlighted like 516 times or something like that.
People are using this as a motivational quote.
So yes, this is the message. The medium is the message.
Marsha McLuhan would be nonplussed. And Kalinske realized this in a way that only people who have been there and done that possibly can. That when you tell memorable, universal, intricate, and heartbreaking stories, anything is possible.
Bring us back to the present, Dilly. Bring this horrible flashback to an end.
Sir, are you okay? You blacked out for like 4 hours playing that Game Boy. Anyways, do you want
okay,
more?
Because of the time difference, everything is fine.
Okay, more, please.
Interrupted the geisha girl from earlier, appearing beside Kalinske with a warm jug of sake.
Still the geisha girl.
Oh, yes, maybe?
She asked hopefully, pointing to his glass. Kalinske nodded, returning to the moment. Yeah, he's finally back. Shake your head, Alex.
Where am I? What year is it?
Then there's still time.
Tom.
We can still beat Nintendo.
But before the girl could fix him a drink, she suddenly became transfixed by the Game Gear. And with the well-dressed man, the world suddenly shrunk around her.
Are you playing columns?
Would you...
That's so hot.
It would have been out of the arcade at this time, I'm pretty sure.
Hey guys, look, it's columns.
Imagine the entire room just like starts going over Kalinske's shoulder because like a commercial.
Yeah.
And then the screen just turns off immediately because the battery runs out.
There it is.
And the guy playing the Game Boy looks at the camera. He goes, "Well, I'm an idiot. I can't."
Womp womp.
Well, would you look at that, Kalinske mused, while having a revelation that would shape Sega, the video game industry, and the face of entertainment as a whole. Video games weren't just for kids. They were for anyone that wanted to feel like a kid.
Highlighter update. I will provide these throughout.
Mm-hmm.
252 have highlighted this part about video games weren't just for kids through to the end of the paragraph.
Anyone who missed the freedom and innocence that comes with endless wonder, video games were for everyone. They just didn't realize it yet.
What is this?
The geisha girl asked, finally refilling Kalinske's glass.
What's this? What's this?
The future.
Something in the air. What's this? There's columns everywhere. What's this?
Batteries run out.
Wake up, Tom. This isn't fair.
I was actually discussing Danny Elfman today at work. As he considered the question, Nakayama noticed that a grin had grown across Kalinske's face, and he seemed to know that it had nothing to do with the sake. Well, maybe a little bit to do with
the sake helped.
It is very powerful drink. This was the kind of expression that you remember someone by for the rest of his life. The kind of expression that either starts or ends a story.
Or a chapter.
You see?
Kalinske said to the girl, as if it were obvious.
It's the future.
The future.
Future.
Welcome to the
In the
world
year
of
2000.
tomorrow.
Okay, now we get to.
All right, I gotta go.
All right, peace to you.
Yeah.
Okay. We will have to double up on some stuff here. All right, let us introduce our cast as we finally get to Sega of America.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of people in this scene.
Indeed.
Oh boy.
First off, we have Michael Katz, the outgoing president of Sega of America, also known as Hafahyaku Mike.
Because he only got to 500,000 instead of 1 million. Then we have Tom Kalinske, newly minted CEO of Sega of America. Ability to walk on water still requires confirmation.
And by the way, Alex will also be playing Mike Katz in this scene, which means he
Yes.
will be talking to himself. Then we have Shinobu Toyoda, EVP of Sega of America, definitely not a spy.
Then we have
Well,
a
hold
lot of
on.
people.
One sec.
Oh.
Shinobu
Sorry.
is going to be a continuing character. So who can we have grab this one?
Me? I thought it was Shinobu.
Oh, you were? I thought.
Yes.
Then,
Okay, yes.
Then so you are.
There it is.
Then
got it.
after that, there's a bunch of people that talk over each other that are not named, so I just dubbed them a cacophony of discontent, unidentified Sega of America employees speaking over each other, their voices blurring together, anticipating present online discourse.
That
Yeah.
sounds right up my alley. I'll be every single one.
There we
Yes.
go. I love it. Then we have
I'll help you,
Diane
Dilly.
Drosnes, Director of Licensing for Sega of America, not a fan of Sergeant Kabuki Man.
As will become clear in the narrative.
Yes. I'll take her for now.
Now,
Yeah.
I have to explain the next one. Paul Rioux was a no-nonsense, I mean, still alive, but is a no-nonsense Vietnam veteran known as kind of the taskmaster of the group. So every description kind of plays off of that. My apologies if anyone who actually knows the man is listening. So we have Paul Rioux, COO of Sega of America, got his marketing team through NAMM with minimal casualties.
So, Johnny or Jumpman, which one? Who wants it?
I'll do it.
All right, you'll have to bring out the nom on this one. And finally, Al Nilsen, Director of Marketing of Sega of America, a large body, larger than life marketing dynamo.
That is
described in
actually a
the
line
text.
from the book.
Yes.
It is.
And that is also Jumpman.
All righty.
And if Mr. Nilsen is listening tonight, we are very sorry. I was mentioning earlier in the stream that Nilsen doesn't have as much of a problem with this book as Kalinske seems to. He seemed, you know, at least
I
as
think-
far.
I think the book captures Nilsen very well. I mean, some of the dialogue is terrible, just like all of the dialogue is terrible. But I really do think the book actually captures Nilsen pretty well.
And let's see how well as we get into Chapter 4, Rude Awakening. Not the Rude Awakening, not a Rude Awakening, just Rude Awakening. As Kalinske settled into his new office in the one-story warehouse where Sega rented space, he couldn't help but think about how different this was from every other place he'd ever worked. It was a far cry from the Tell's 8-story tower in Hawthorne, California, not even in the same league as J. Walter Thompson's high-rise on Manhattan's Madison Avenue, and barely a step up from the college apartment where he'd founded Wisconsin Man magazine. Where is my cursor? There it is. Well, he thought, at least this new office came with a view, and then he looked out the window at the small company parking lot. In the documentary, they do actually show this building quite a bit. Especially whenever Shinobu Toyoda is talking. I don't know, they just became like his calling card. Because he was there, he was one of the earliest people there. Because he was acting as the agent.
Yep.
It was his first day as president and CEO of Sega of America, and he had only met a few people thus far, but he couldn't resist trying to guess which car belonged to which person.
You're a colossally outstanding. No, isn't this is
Oh,
is
yeah.
Katz.
Oh, yeah. Never mind.
You're a colossally outstanding idiot.
Someone said, interrupting his thoughts. Kalinske turned around, looked up, and muttered a barely audible noise that could be best described as the sound a question mark might make. I mean, there is such a thing in linguistics. I believe it's a particular type of glottal stop. It was Michael Katz, standing by the door, slowly shaking his head with an unfinished smile on his face.
I'm sorry, Michael.
Kalinske said.
I didn't actively pursue this job. You stealing my job isn't what makes you an idiot. That makes you kind of an asshole. But I've always known you were secretly kind of an asshole. What I didn't know was that you were also secretly a colossally outstanding idiot.
Kalinske offered Katz a seat, but he declined.
How so? For taking this job?
Katz said.
What makes you say that? Oh, I don't know. About a million things. But at the top of the list is the glaring fact that you don't know a thing about video games.
Kalinske considered this.
I'll learn,
he said at last.
Yes. And what you'll soon learn is that you shouldn't have taken this job. Do you know what Sega really is? Sega is a joke. Sega is a punchline.
Katz ranted. He was good at ranting. At times, it appeared to be his best quality.
Sega is a ticking time bomb, and you just signed up to strap it to your chest.
Kalinske cut him off.
I'm glad you came in here, actually. I've been doing some research, and I wanted to say that you did a very strong job, given the hand you were dealt. I know.
Katz said, nodding.
I did. And look how far away you are from even being a blip on Nintendo's radar. Then I guess I'll be the one to go down with the ship.
Oh, God. Kalinske said with a dignity he felt distinguished him from most other leaders.
Hold your head up. Look, I appreciate the advice, Michael. I know it's going to be an uphill battle.
Katz shook his head.
This just isn't like you,
he said.
What happened? Did he take you to the secret lab? Or was it the hostess bar?
Kalinske tried to not let his eyes reveal the answer.
Oh my God. It was both, wasn't it?
Katz snickered. Kalinske stood up and walked Katz to the door.
Listen, I appreciate the whatever you would call this, but wait.
Katz protested.
I just wanted to ask you a question. Do you really think he's not going to do the same thing to you that he did to me? Think about it.
What is the thing? Like, we've read this chapter before, and I'm like, what is the thing? Kalinske tried his best not to. There was a question that had scraped the top of his mind on numerous occasions since his Japan trip, but he'd been trying his best to avoid it. With a sheen of sincerity, Katz met Kalinske's eyes and offered some parting words.
Just remember, you may think you're in charge, and you may think he's your friend, but watch your back.
And then, before leaving, Katz locked eyes with Kalinske, and it dawned on both men that their future success and failure would forever be strangely intertwined. Whatever the fuck that's supposed to mean. Katz went off to be a corporate headhunter. That's
Yes. I really do think you did a good job, Michael. Thanks, Tom. Thanks.
They shook hands and, for a moment,
Lift us
let
up where we
mutual respect
belong,
trump awkwardness.
where
Okay.
the eagles fly.
So a couple of problems with this. First of all, they were actually overlapped for a couple months.
Yeah, for
did not-
months, exactly.
It did not. Tom did not come in, and then Katz left the same day. That was not
Yeah.
what happened. Two, I'm sure that, like, you know, there's no interview list, so I don't know that he definitely talked to Katz, but Katz definitely would not have given off a vibe of, yeah, I'm cool with Tom. He has said a lot of times he does not think that Tom was the right guy for this job. And not because he's an idiot, just that he wasn't the right guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is a bit of a rivalry going on. So,
Their
yeah.
destinies are always intertwined. You know what this really is? This is like, you know, the beginning of the Pokemon game, you know?
Oh, wow.
Oh no.
And they are now rivals.
Yeah, like, I guess what Blake Harris is trying to foreshadow is that eventually Japan is going to step in and remove control.
They're going to do it to you.
But
Exactly.
that doesn't even make sense for Katz's situation.
No,
Not-
because Katz was never Nakayama's choice, and that doomed him from the beginning. It wasn't a sudden yet inevitable betrayal.
And even with the stuff set up in this book, it's just like, okay, you didn't sell the expectation that they wanted you to. And at the end of the book, Kalinske steps away of his own volition, which may or may not be true given recent evidence. But, you know, again, just taking the book by itself,
Yes.
it literally doesn't make any sense.
Wait, we were reading this book for it to make sense?
Somebody was, unfortunately.
Wait, where did our Cacophony of Dissent go?
He had an emergency.
Oh.
So we will cacophonize if we need to. Kalinske shut the door and walked back to the window, where he spent a few moments staring at the unspectacular parking lot. This was the view. This was his new life. Get used to it, he thought. There was a gentle knock at the door. Johnny, knock at the door.
I knocked
There
on
we
my
go.
mic.
There,
Counts.
perfect.
It didn't come through. But
Okay.
Jumpman has you covered.
Thank you, Jim.
And in came Shinobu Toyoda, and that's when, you know, the card will come up for the character, you know, Tarantino style.
Exactly.
Thin, soft-spoken Japanese man who wore fine Italian suits, fetching neckties, and a pair of thick glasses that always seemed to be trying to escape down his nose. Let's see, do I have a Toyota photo here? Yeah, here we go. There he is.
There he is.
It's like
Glasses seem
Dodgy
firmly
Sonic.
affixed to me, but okay.
He served as the executive vice president with the primary responsibility of acting as liaison between California's Sega of America and Tokyo's Sega of Japan. Of course,
That
as has
is-
been, yeah.
Yeah. No such thing. Now, even the Sega of America people called it Sega of Japan. So in that sense, there's some validity to using it in a book like this. But there is no such thing as Sega of Japan.
Yeah, and I got called out on this in the video I did for Norm. I said Nintendo of Japan, and it was just
Yeah.
shorthand. Okay, I probably should have said, and Nintendo
In
Japan.
CL.
Well, I didn't want to do that because I want them to understand what the hell I'm saying.
Incel.
Oh boy, oh boy.
Explains their
After
public
Kalinske
relations.
accepted the job, Toyoda had graciously been meeting with the new CEO to give him the lay of the land. Within moments of their final meeting, for their first meeting, not their final
Whoa,
meeting.
that was a short relationship.
Whoa.
Kalinske could tell that behind Toyoda's reserved demeanor and perpetual smile for the camera grin was an incredibly shrewd and resourceful man. What he couldn't tell, however, was the true source of this man's devotion. Kalinske had heard varying opinions on Toyoda's role at Sega of America, ranging from the straw that stirs the drink to a Japanese spy who is ready to drop at the drop of a hat tattle on his colleagues to Nakayama. Of course, the great irony of this book is it doesn't answer which one it is. It just kind of sits there. Neither does the documentary, but the documentary has a lot of Toyoda in it, and he's one of the better parts of the documentary.
Yes.
Thus far, his actions had caused Kalinske to believe the former, but then again, wasn't that exactly how the latter would behave? Kalinske happily greeted his guest.
Toyoda-san, come in.
Please, just Shinobu.
Kalinske nodded, convincing himself that Toyoda's desire not to be addressed informally should count as a point
To be addressed informally.
To be addressed informally should count as a point in the not a spy column. Though, once again, perhaps that was just a clever ruse. Toyoda punctured Kalinske's pulpy thought bubble. What? What?
What the hell?
Chunky thoughts.
By advising him that the executive meeting was about to begin.
It will be a great chance for you to meet everyone and understand what they do.
Perfect.
Kalinske said, and then followed Toyoda through the wide hallways of the warehouse. Though the building was small, it had an open feel, which made the many boxes stacked against the wall feel less like clutter and more like the foundation of something to come.
Did I hear you mention the other day that you had recently been in Dallas? What's out there?
Yes, my family is there.
Toyoda said. After a moment, he seemed to realize his answer could benefit from elaboration, and he continued.
When I left to Japan to work for Mitsubishi, my wife and I made a life in Dallas, so she stays there with the kids full time, and I return for the weekend so we can be together.
Wait, you fly back every weekend. So you basically commute from Dallas.
Yes, exactly.
Toyoda said softly.
That's...
Kalinske was about to say crazy until he realized that he would be doing a similar, though shorter, commute for the foreseeable future. With the school year about to begin for Kalinske's daughters, he and Karen had decided until next summer it would be best if she remained in Los Angeles with the girls, and he rent a small place in the Bay Area. On weekends, he would drive down to Los Angeles to spend time with his family, and then drive back north early Monday morning. It was not at all an ideal situation for Kalinske nor his car's odometer, but it wouldn't have been fair to his daughters to move so abruptly, especially when there was a decent chance Sega might not even be around a year from now. I mean, Sega would have been fine, but yeah. I will say that is it Route 5? That's the that goes Northern California. The one time I went up and down that was It's like the easiest highway drive I've ever had. Which was unusual. I know that it sucks in California, but for me, it was we were in Grass Valley. We went straight down to Yosemite. It was no traffic at all. It was good. And hey, at least he wasn't going all the way to Dallas each weekend.
That's really nice, Shinobu.
It's an interesting situation. I don't know if they specifically sought out people who were of Japanese origin that had just kind of moved to the U.S. because this is what oh, dang, I'm forgetting his name. I talked to him. What's his name?
Steve Hanawa?
Yeah, Steve Hanawa. This was basically Steve Hanawa's situation. He was still part of Sega when he moved, but he was the original liaison for Sega of America. That he had just decided I want to.
Let me
stay.
see here. I've got a translated interview with Toyoda. See.
And that's
employed
him there as
Mitsubishi while on assignment in the U.S. for a joint venture. He was told to return to Japan after a major reorganization at Mitsubishi Corporation. However, since Mr. Toyoda strongly desired to continue working in the United States, he decided to change jobs, leaving his family behind in the United States with the assurance that he would definitely return. He returned to Japan alone for the time being, proceeded with job hunting, sending his resume to headhunters. Then he received an offer from a headhunter saying there's a game company called Sega that's establishing a new management team for its U.S. subsidiary with an American president and a Japanese vice president. Are you interested? The interview with Nakayama took place at the Arc Hills Club, a members-only club in Minato-ku, Tokyo, shortly after his return. When I arrived there, President Hayao Nakayama and then Senior Managing Director Shinichi Nakamura were there. Mr. Nakayama said from the start, we only have 30 minutes today, and then he spent the next 20 minutes talking by himself. He talked about how wonderful the 16-bit game machine that they were going to launch was. Suddenly, he mentioned 16-bit. At the time, I had no idea what he was talking about. I couldn't understand anything. Since Mr. Nakayama took up 20 minutes, so I thought I had to say something in the remaining 10 minutes. I said, I want to set up a business in America. I still find America interesting, and I want to become a president. I asked Mr. Nakayama and the others about it. They said, interesting guy. It seems they said, interesting guy came to us, so I joined the company with Mr. Nakayama's 20 minutes and my 10 minutes of speech. That is the story straight from Toyoda himself, machine translated from Japanese.
Very cool. Yeah, he seems like a cool dude. Don't know how much he ultimately did for the organization, really, but that's a question for us historians at the end of the day.
Indeed.
Toyoda led him into a shadowy conference room with a large table and dark wooden walls. The room was filled nearly to capacity with just over a dozen employees. Kalinske took a brief moment to introduce himself and explain today that he was there merely as an observer. This led to a few minutes of glad-handing, ass-kissing, and proclamations of future greatness.
As one does. I know I'm always pulling out the proclamations of future greatness.
I mean, that's kind of, I get what he's getting at with that.
I get what he's getting at, too. It's the grandiose language that is...
After the compulsory pleasantries came to an end, the meeting resumed, if you could even call it a meeting. In Kalinske's experience, meetings were places where employees could share ideas, some good, some bad, some unclear, and then isolate the best ones for implementation. Meetings were places where status updates were given, strategies were discussed, and most importantly, employees left feeling slightly better about what they were doing. There was nothing like that. Here, all the voices blurred together into a cacophony of discontent.
All right, our cacophony is not here.
All right, Jonny, Jumpman, me. This is how we'll do the rotation.
Yep.
Okay. I'll start. What's the status with Atomic Robo Kid?
Who cares? That game's garbage.
Well, whose fault is that?
Some idiot at UPL for coming up with a crap game, some other idiot in Japan for porting it to the Genesis, and then another idiot here from ordering too many copies.
Are you talking to me?
Well, now that you mention it.
Hey, screw that. You're lucky you weren't fired for any of that Babbage bullshit.
Finally, there was a go ahead.
Babbage's,
I
sorry.
was going to say, I assume the person getting dumped on by everyone else that is not named is David Rhodes, since he was the VP of sales. Kalinske also indicated to me that Rhodes had been at Matchbox, and that they were at Matchbox together. And one of the first changes he made when he got to Sega was not having Rhodes be there anymore. So make of all of that plus the cacophony here what you will.
Finally, there was a respite to the chaos when the verbal daggers were momentarily replaced with collective giggles. Sergeant. Sergeant Kabuki Man. Sega's director of licensing, Diane Drosnes, repeated over the laughter. Yep, that's right. He's back. Sergeant Kabuki Man, NYPD, was a 1990 comedy about a clumsy New York cop turned superhero with powers like heat-seeking chopsticks and fatal sushi. I mean, if you're Homer Simpson, then you know all about fatal sushi.
Exactly.
Only a few Sega employees had actually seen the movie, but those who had all agreed it had to be among the worst ever made. Yet, despite its seemingly obvious horridness, Sega's game developers in Tokyo thought it was a wonderful film, and the Americans needed to obtain the license to make a game based on it. Every month, Drosnes and her colleagues would send faxes explaining why this was a bad idea, but without fail, the suggestion kept coming back from Japan. This perpetual cultural difference was a source of great levity, but after everyone had a quick laugh, the bickering resumed in full force. Kalinske tried to hold his tongue, but it was tough. There were, however, 3 employees whom Kalinske immediately deemed as highly promising. One of them was the enigmatic Shinobu Toyoda. And the other 2, Paul Rioux and Al Nilsen, he knew from previous career stops.
Both of you settle down,
Rioux said, controlling the room with poise, authority, and a hint of threat. Rioux was a stocky Vietnam veteran with hollow eyes and a deep, silvery voice.
I'll take care of giving us a little wiggle room, and then we'll ship through Chicago to make up for some of the lost time.
Kalinske had briefly worked with Rioux at Mattel, where Rioux had held a management role in the electronics division and had been hailed as the nuts and bolts guy of the operation. I don't think he was that deeply involved, but I do believe he was directly involved with Mattel Electronics.
Yeah, he was at Mattel Electronics. I forget his exact position, but yeah, he was there.
And that's part of the reason I've been trying to talk to him, but
yes.
Yeah, he did say like, yeah, let's talk, but then,
And now after this farce, he never will.
And he later went on to Vivendi Universal.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, Universal, not when it was Vivendi. I
Right,
forget how everything
Universal.
Yeah. So he worked with Mark Cherney and all those people.
Mm-hmm.
It was immediately clear that Rioux was the go-to guy at Sega of America, the one who had made sure that everyone had at least a vague idea what they were supposed to be doing. Throughout his life, from fighting in Vietnam to fighting for shelf space, he was an unapologetic gladiator who always got things done. I don't know if gladiator and soldier quite line up how he thinks they do.
Yes.
Hey, maybe we should create a game, hold on. Hey, maybe we should create some big event to generate interest in the game,
said Nilsen, a large body, larger-than-life marketing dynamo. Beneath
Heard
round...
Oh, I said heard it here first, because I just copied that in my description.
Right. Let's pull him up. There we go. Cool guy. We'll talk to anyone. Yeah. So, if you have questions for Al Nilsen, he's there.
Yep, I did a great interview of him about, over 10 years ago now, I guess.
Beneath round-rimmed spectacles, Nilsen's face rarely depicted emotions, but when he spoke, a wonderfully boundless kid trapped in an adult body enthusiasm could not be contained.
And I think there truly is that about him. I don't think that's really much of an exaggeration.
He's intelligent, though.
Oh no, he absolutely is. But I'm just saying that the enthusiasm and still having some of that kid in him at heart. That's what I mean by that. No, very intelligent.
Like maybe I don't know, National Kids Day. Yeah, that might work. You know, like Mother's Day or Father's Day, but for kids. We'll make Atomic Robo Kit the perfect gift for the occasion. What do you say, guys? Do we have a winner?
Nobody responded, and Nilsen sat back down. From their
I'd
time,
buy that for $1.
from their time at Mattel, Kalinske remembered Nilsen as someone who could and would lay golden eggs from time to time. Seeing Nilsen excitedly churning with ideas put Kalinske slightly at ease.
Okay, now
He was
Nilsen's a
eventually-
great guy and all, but he was in a rather low level marketing position in Mattel Electronics when he was at Mattel. So I can't remember if I asked either of them how much they knew about each other before they were at the company, but I wouldn't think that Nilsen and Kalinske would have interacted much at Mattel just based on the disparity in their positions. But I could be wrong.
And of course, the name. Well, okay. Once we get to the end of the chapter, we'll talk about that. Never mind.
Yeah.
After a lingering silence, Toyoda meekly spoke up.
Oh, sorry. If we delay the shipment as Al suggested, but not for such a reason, can we? Is it depreciate?
Depreciate, yes.
Depreciate the R&D costs for the second quarter?
Nobody responded, but it was clear the financial guys in the room loved this idea, and they scribbled it down. Toyoda only spoke up a few times, each time asking a clever question or clarifying an important remark that had gotten lost in the perpetual shuffle. Kalinske gazed out the window of the conference room. Okay, this one has windows. Once again, attempting to accept that this was now his life. At least he had Rioux, Nilsen, and Toyoda. Kalinske took a deep breath. Everything would be okay. But just as Kalinske was starting to feel a little better about this motley crew, the meeting once again turned into a name-calling, shouting match.
Return the cacophony!
Who cares about depreciating the R&D costs? You can't expect a Band-Aid to cover up a hole the size of the goddamn Grand Canyon.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't be in this hall if you didn't convince us to overbid on trash like Dick Tracy and Spider-Man.
What do you want from me? These are our only options. Everyone else is developing for Nintendo.
So why don't we get them to develop for us?
Kalinske said, before he even realized that he was speaking. I guess they would have had to get the Dick Tracy license this early.
Yeah, it was one of the very first games that was done in America. So
yeah, it was at SGI.
Mm-hmm.
With
Yep.
Guest co-star Mike Schwartz, he
Indeed.
of Bubsy fame.
Indeed.
His own words caught him off guard, but he'd already started, so he couldn't stop now.
If they've already made the games for Nintendo, why don't we offer them some money to put them on our system too?
Kalinske said, shining a spotlight of reason in a room full of nonsense.
Maybe we could even get them to make enhanced versions for the Genesis, so they'll stand out.
Kalinske looked around, expecting enthusiastic nods. It's like that gif with Hades
Yeah.
from the Hercules.
Check and mate.
Instead, he found a combination of discomfort, dismay, and maybe even some pity. Toyoda spoke up to fill the void.
Those are all strong ideas, Tom. Thank you for sharing. But unfortunately, at this moment, they will not be the most efficient. Nintendo has taken measures to prevent anything like that. They are prepared.
Kalinske nodded, getting the message. Shut up until you know what you're talking about. He thought about trying to compensate for his blunder by making some bold promise or guarantee of success, but realized that that might make him appear even more out of his element. For now, there was nothing to do but sit there, listen, and wonder if he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. When the meeting ended, everyone quickly exited the room, except for the conference room, except for Paul Rioux, who lumbered towards Kalinske with a thick Hemingway-esque grin. did Hemingway grin? I'm not sure about that.
I know how you're feeling.
He said.
It's how I felt my first day on the job. To come from a place like Mattel to this,
Yeah, it's a little different from what I expected.
Kalinske said.
it is. And it took me a little while to figure out that different is good.
Rioux said, reflecting.
Anyway, I wanted to come over and say that I was very, very pleased when I heard you were coming here. We're going to do a hell of a job.
We shall see.
We shall. And to help you get there, I've put together a dossier of information so you can familiarize yourself with Nintendo. They're a real beast, and their financials are just... I don't even know how to describe it. I've got all kinds of articles, reports, presentations, and things of that nature. It's yours, if you want it.
Many Bothans died to bring us this information.
Yes, that is the vibe I'm getting from this. Kalinske was so grateful that for a moment he considered enveloping Rioux with a giant bear hug in which he would be crushed and destroyed. Instead, he took a moment to gather himself and simply say thank you before setting out to learn everything there was to know about Nintendo.
Unbeknownst to them, Toyota was standing down at the end of the hall with the clipboard, taking notes.
So, one person who does not get, I'm not sure if he mentioned at all in this book, that would have been here right at the start is Ken Balthaser.
Yes.
Who was the Sega guy in charge of product development. First came in under Michael Katz.
Yep. Knew each other from Epics.
And he is the guy who tried to build, an independent, well, not independent, but the self-sufficient product side of Sega, which was very important for them to have stuff that actually appealed to an American audience at the start.
Yep, and followed the same playbook that he had followed at Epics, which was bringing in a lot of European developers like Novatrade in Hungary and like Infogrames in France, all companies that he had worked with at Epics as part of building up their early slate of Western-focused titles.
And he was interviewed by Blake Harris for this book, and he was not happy.
Yeah, because he gave a lot of information on the development side. I've interviewed Ken. He gave a lot of information on the development side, and then, none of it was there. It was just all about the marketing people. It's a big book. You have to focus where you have to focus, but still with the amount of time he gave to not be in here essentially at all. Thankfully, though, our good friend Ken Horowitz also interviewed him for his excellent book on Sega of America. And so you get a lot more of Ken Balthaser in that one. And, whenever I get around to writing that part of video game history, you'll get some Ken Balthaser from me, too.
Yes, he had a super interesting career. He was
Cybervision.
Yes, an early attempt at a multimedia PC, then went through Atari, and then headed up, and then Epics, right? Epic was...
Yeah, then he was at Epics, yeah.
And then Activision, I believe, was right after that. And then to Sega, and
then his son had a company, and he, I believe he was there at his son's company for a bit, third-party developer, doing stuff for like Genesis and such.
So he worked really all over the place. Really, if you worked at Epics, you probably were at a ton of different companies. That is.
Well, a lot of them
learned.
were the same crew because Joe Miller and Ken Balthaser. I mean, they both went through that path.
Yeah, but then I'm thinking about people like Matt Householder, who just like,
oh sure,
he went off and did his own thing. After coming through an entirely different route. I mean, he was at Atari, but he
not entirely different because but Atari via Williams' like sister company GDI.
Yeah. Yes, and a very nice dude.
Yes.
But so yeah, that is probably one of the biggest things where Harris drops the ball, where he's like, "Say, this is the core team here at SOA here at the beginning, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the people who are helping to make product that because." And this is especially acute in the documentary, where it's like no other game exists other than Sonic. It does
Yes.
not exist. So we're gonna leave it off here for the night. We've gotten through 4 chapters so far. Do we have any reactions from those who may not have read this nearly as thoroughly before?
This was very entertaining. I will say that at the very least.
We strive to be.
When you guys said this was bad, I thought you were exaggerating, but no, this is exactly as advertised. How did this get published?
I don't know.
I think kind of it was the flaws in it were seen as like this is part of geek chic. It's like this is
Yeah.
how the gamers talk, guys.
And yeah, it was very disappointing to me personally because of course, so you don't know what's coming in advance usually, and like the one sample chapter they released is actually the next chapter that we'll be reading when we pick this back up, which is just about the only chapter in the entire book that is not written in this style. So like the sample chapter I read in advance was his brief history of NOA, which was actually not bad. And it's just billed as this 500-page book on the Sega Nintendo battle, um with hundreds of interviews, and I was like, this is the sequel to Game Over we've always wanted. And I pre-ordered it, and it dropped at midnight on my Kindle, and then I started reading, and I was less excited.
Yeah, I picked this up in a library initially. I did read the whole thing, and there was definitely some interesting parts about it, but it's very much a story that just it's so constrained. It just like it views everything through the lens of the marketing team, but in this very garish way. I think it might be the best way to put it.
Well, and it cements, it kind of amplifies some of the ground that Stephen Kent had trod before him, which is that Kalinske came in and Sega of America was this brilliant marketing juggernaut, and they conquered the world, and they would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for those damn Japanese and their little Nakayama over two, and which is just not as we know now, and which I've been expounding upon in like at least 6 or 7 different podcast episodes. My own podcast is not what Sega was really in this period at all. Yes, they did some great marketing, and yes, that led to some temporary market share victories, but man, Nakayama thought Katz was a spender. Oh
yeah,
no.
that is I didn't remember that quote, and I was like, whoa, really? You're gonna ignore that much? And that's why I think if you're, I imagine he interviewed Kalinske like 10 times or something like that.
Yeah.
To get everything for this book, and that's an instance where you need to really drill down and ask questions like, "What do you think your failures were?"
Absolutely.
And I'm not sure Kalinske would entirely be up to say that, but
yeah. Now there was no other way probably for Kalinske to do what he was ordered to do. He was ordered to build market share and beat Nintendo, and he did that. It's just that there was no way, Sega being the type of company it was, and the resources it had available, it's just no way that was sustainable. So it's really, the buck doesn't stop with Kalinske, who was in large part doing what he was told. The buck stops with Nakayama, who himself got way too aggressive and tried to push the envelope with Sega in more directions than the company could actually handle.
Yeah, and I know you always harp on the theme park stuff, but also just the continuous churn of hardware development, acting like this is the height of the home computer era where people were just buying whatever came out. And even before the 32X, they were putting way too much into putting out like 2 new products a year, 2 new hardware products a year. Even if some of them were fiddly and whatever, it was too much effort they were expending into something like that.
Yeah.
And then it's like, what do you do other than market it? Because you can't just expect people to buy these.
Yeah, well, I know I've said this before, and it's a bit cliche, but it's still kind of true. The 4, there have been 4 major video game console companies since the revival of the market in the mid 80s, and Nintendo's a toy company, Sega's a coin op company, Sony's a consumer electronics company, and Microsoft is an OS and network services company. And boy, I mean, their approach to the console market, all 4 is so different and entirely comes from, the roots of the company and the business they were in prior to getting into video games.
Yeah. I didn't really think about it like that, but I think putting it into perspective of just, recent stuff going on in the games industry, I think, yeah, that certainly checks out. I didn't really consider it like that.
Yeah. And, in the arcade industry, what do? Technology's advancing, you do a board modification, or you stick a little bit more memory on the board, or, you're constantly churning new hardware. And I think Nakayama kind of had that mentality a bit.
Yeah. They're everyone always wants to comb through this stuff because they're always the fall of Sega and all that, and it's definitely an interesting case study to go through. But I think there's way more to Sega than purely what they did that made them no longer be able to make consoles. Because if you look at the grand overview of everything, it ultimately comes down to that they were not a strong enough company to support that.
Yes.
They may, in an alternate reality, maybe Microsoft gets scared out of it because Sega, has a decent market share. And maybe they're able to live. But, that's highly hypothetical in its own way. But I think there's a lot to Sega to comb through. And it's way more accessible to get information on than Nintendo. I don't think I've ever talked to anyone who worked at Nintendo, but I have talked to quite a few people who worked at Sega.
Talked to a few people who worked at Nintendo, but not as many as have worked at Sega.
Yeah.
You know what could have helped the Saturn? Adding a 3rd GPU.
There we go.
Word.
Amen.
Yeah, I believe Crater Gaming, at the start said, "What next? You'll be telling me they didn't add a 2nd CPU to the Saturn." I don't remember what that was in response to.
Yes.
So yes, this upcoming chapter will be quite interesting, and we actually have quite a number of updates to add to kind of the core of this chapter, in which a certain character was revealed for the first time.
Well, indeed.
Technically not first. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, which is actually one of the greatest things that this book provided. And then he also did a follow-up article on the internet as well.
Well, the article came out before the book, which is what I was going to mention, because...
okay, but it was part of promoting the book.
Yeah, because Sam Borofsky died before the book actually came out. You will learn who Sam Borofsky is next time.
Yes.
But, yeah, so... Yeah, that will be the next one, and then actually I will bid Alex to read this chapter just because it's a different chapter. So we will get a different voice in here. And then after that, we will be back on our crap, and we will continue on into the sunset, but we need to find a day in which both Jumpman and Rage can be here. That'll be the main issue.
Yep.
But that's on me. I'm the scheduling guy, putting this all together.
You're our Paul Rioux, dragging us all through.
Indeed. I'm the gruff Vietnam vet, doing the things that need to be done.
The nuts and bolts guy.
One other question, because either you mentioned your Nakayama impression. Was that supposed to be Don Corleone?
No.
Oh, darn it.
Do you want to know, or do you want to keep guessing?
You know what?
Into the
Let's
future.
leave it a mystery throughout the series.
Because I will return to the impression at one point. I imagine I know where I'm gonna slide it back in.
At the end of the stream, yes. Who's trying to impersonate with this Nakayama impression?
I believe Alex has got it.
Leave your guesses in the comments below.
Indeed.
We'll find out at the end of the series.
That's how
right.
it will be. That's our bait for the night.
You gotta have the hook to keep them coming back.
That's right. All right, we are going to end for tonight. Thanks everybody for coming by. You're all lovely. We'll see you then.